3 years of silence, one crimson dress, and the crime lord who couldn't look away. When Lena Hartwell walked into Adrian Voss's penthouse wearing confidence instead of camouflage, she didn't know she was stepping into a war. Tonight, the Invisible Woman would learn the price of being seen by the most dangerous man in Chicago, a strategist hiding in plain sight, an empire built on her brilliance. And the moment everything changes, don't miss a single twist, like this video. Comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels, and stay until the very end. The thing about being invisible is that you forget what your own face looks like. Lena Hartwell had perfected the art over 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. She knew because she'd counted every single one of them, marked in the mental ledger she kept alongside Adrian Voss's appointments, his enemies, and his carefully maintained alibis. The uniform was simple: black pencil skirt, cream blouse, hair twisted into a knot so tight it could strangle ambition. Flat shoes, minimal makeup, a cipher in designer fabric. She moved through Adrian's world like smoke, there when needed, gone when not, never once disrupting the carefully controlled atmosphere of his domain. Until tonight. Lena stood before her bathroom mirror in a studio apartment she could barely afford despite the generous salary, holding a dress the color of arterial blood. Silk. Fitted. Entirely inappropriate for a woman who'd spent 1,000 days making herself forgettable. Her phone buzzed on the sink. Evan's name lit up the screen. "Still on for 8? Can't wait to see you." Her reflection smiled back, uncertain and hopeful in equal measure. 6 weeks of coffee shop conversations, stolen lunch hours, text messages that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she was more than the shadow behind Chicago's most feared crime boss. The dress slipped over her head like a promise. When Lena stepped into the elevator of Adrian's building, because of course Evan had suggested meeting at the restaurant just 2 blocks away, and of course she'd agreed, not thinking about the route, she felt the weight of transformation. Her hair fell loose past her shoulders. Heels added 3 inches and subtracted every ounce of invisibility she'd cultivated. The elevator climbed toward the penthouse. She'd grab her forgotten phone charger from her desk and be gone before Adrian noticed. He had a meeting tonight anyway, something about the Riverside development deal. She'd scheduled it herself. The doors opened with a soft chime. Adrian Voss stood in the center of his living room, backlit by floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Chicago's glittering skyline like a kingdom laid out for inspection. He'd dismissed his meeting early. His suit jacket was gone. Sleeves rolled to reveal forearms that had ended careers and lives with equal efficiency. A tumbler of whiskey caught the light in his hand. He turned. For 3 years, Adrian had looked at Lena exactly 73 times. She knew because each glance had been purely functional. Take this file, reschedule that meeting, remind me about the shipping manifest. His eyes were the color of January ice, and they'd never once registered her as anything beyond a particularly useful piece of furniture. They registered her now. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut. Lena's hand instinctively moved to smooth her dress, then stopped. His gaze tracked the movement, followed the line of red silk from her collarbone to her knees, then slowly traveled back up. "Miss Hartwell." His voice was exactly the same as always, controlled, precise, empty of inflection. But something in the way he set down his glass suggested volcanic activity beneath glacial surfaces. "Mr. Voss, I just need to grab—" She gestured vaguely toward the office suite that branched off from the main living area. "My charger. I'll only be a moment." "You're going out." Not a question. Adrian didn't ask questions when he already knew the answers. "Yes, dinner. I won't be long." "With whom?" Lena blinked. In 3 years, Adrian had never asked about her personal life. She could have been married with 6 children for all the interest he'd shown in her existence outside these walls. "A friend," she said carefully. "His name." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Lena had seen Adrian interrogate men who'd stolen from him, lied to him, betrayed him. This was that voice, the one that came before broken bones and shallow graves. "I don't see how that's relevant to my employment, Mr. Voss." A mistake. She knew it the moment his expression shifted, not into anger, but into something far more dangerous. Interest. Adrian crossed the space between them with the fluid economy of a predator. 3 years of calculated distance evaporated in 6 strides. He stopped close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Everything about you is relevant to your employment. His eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. 3 years you've worked for me. 3 years you've been... He paused, seeming to search for the word. Adequate, efficient, present, but not present. I thought that's what you wanted. I thought so too. His hand lifted and Lena's pulse hammered as his fingers caught a strand of her hair, testing its weight and texture like he was evaluating evidence. Until you walked in wearing this and I realized I've been exceptionally stupid. Mr. Voss, Adrian. The correction was soft, absolute. When a man realizes he's allowed the most valuable asset in his organization to remain unclaimed for 3 years, he gets to insist on his first name. Lena's professional mask cracked. I'm your executive assistant, not an asset. You're both. His thumb brushed her jawline, the touch so unexpected she forgot to breathe. You know where every body is buried, Lena, literally and figuratively. You've had access to my accounts, my schedules, my enemies and allies. You could have destroyed me 100 times over. I would never... I know. That's what makes you invaluable. His voice dropped lower. Who is he? It's just dinner. His name. The penthouse security phone buzzed. Adrian's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. Marcus, his head of security, appeared in the doorway with the particular urgency that meant something had gone wrong. Boss, we have a situation. Marcus stopped short, his gaze flickering between Adrian and Lena with poorly concealed shock. In 3 years, Marcus had probably never noticed her at all. Adrian's hand fell away from Lena's face. The Arctic businessman reasserted control. What situation? The Riverside meet. Someone talked. FBI has the warehouse under surveillance. When? Started 20 minutes ago. I've already rerouted the shipment and scrubbed the location. Marcus hesitated. There's something else. The leak. We think we've identified the source. Who? Still confirming. But boss, it came from inside. Someone with access to high-level information. Adrian's expression didn't change, but Lena felt the shift in his energy like barometric pressure before a storm. Get Thomas and David. Full sweep of everyone who knew about tonight. I want names, communications, everything. Already on it. Marcus glanced at Lena again, clearly uncomfortable with her presence during this conversation. She stays, Adrian said flatly. She knows more about my operation than most of my crew anyway. Marcus nodded and disappeared. The moment they were alone, Adrian turned back to Lena. You need to cancel your dinner. No. The word surprised them both. Lena had never refused him anything in 3 years. She'd rearranged her sleep schedule, her eating habits, her entire existence around his requirements. But tonight she'd finally done something just for herself, and she wasn't ready to surrender it. No? Adrian repeated, as if the concept were foreign. I've been planning this for 2 weeks. I've never asked for time off, never complained about the hours, never... She caught herself, modulated her tone back to professional. I'll have my phone on me. If you need anything work-related, I'll handle it, but my personal time is my own. For a long moment, Adrian studied her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Then, incredibly, he smiled. It was a terrible smile, beautiful and cruel in equal measure. You've been hiding this the whole time, haven't you? This spine. I've never hidden anything from you. Liar. He said it almost fondly. You've hidden everything that matters, but that's going to change. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. What restaurant? Why? Because wherever you're going in my city, wearing my assistant like a goddamn declaration of war, I'm going to make sure you're protected. I don't need protection for a dinner date. Adrian's eyes went flat. You're brilliant with schedules, Lena, but apparently naive about human nature. You think it's coincidence that some man suddenly noticed you? That after 3 years of you being invisible, someone sees you now? People can be attracted to, not to ghosts, and that's what you've been. So either you've changed, or he has an agenda. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at her. Torino's. 8 o'clock reservation under the name Cole. Lena's blood went cold. How do you... I know everything that happens in this building, including elevator conversations and phone calls made in the lobby. He stepped closer again. Evan Cole, 32, works in investment consulting, moved to Chicago 6 months ago. No social media presence before last year, no college records that match his supposed alma mater. You investigated my date? I investigate everyone who comes within a mile of my operation. What I can't figure out is why someone with a completely fabricated background would spend 6 weeks courting my assistant. His hand caught her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. So I'm going to ask you one more time, and I want the truth. Has he asked you about me? About my business? About anything that happens in this penthouse? Lena's mind raced backward through 6 weeks of coffee and conversation. Evan asking about her job. Must be interesting working for someone so high profile. Evan curious about her boss. What's he really like? Evan wondering if she ever overheard interesting things. I bet you could write a book with the stories from that office. She'd thought it was normal getting to know you talk. The kind of questions people asked when they wanted to understand your life. Her silence was answer enough. Adrian released her chin and pulled out his phone again. Marcus, Lena's dinner date is a plant. Evan Cole. I want full surveillance on Torino's. Nobody moves on him without my signal, understood? He paused, listening. No, she's still going. Lena's head snapped up. What? Adrian ended the call. You wanted your dinner date. You're going to have it. After you just told me he's, what, some kind of spy? Corporate espionage, most likely. FBI wouldn't be this subtle. Probably hired by the Italians or the Irish. They've been trying to crack my organization for 2 years. He moved to the bar, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, and held one out to her. You're going to go to dinner. You're going to be charming. And you're going to find out exactly what he wants. I'm not a spy. No, you're better. You're the one person he thinks he's successfully manipulated. He'll get comfortable, make mistakes. Adrian's smile turned predatory. And when he does, we'll know exactly who sent him and what they're really after. Lena stared at the whiskey glass, her carefully planned evening dissolving into something dark and dangerous. And if I refuse? You won't. You seem very sure of that, because for 3 years, you've protected my empire with the same dedication I'd expect from my most loyal soldier. You've never questioned, never wavered, never once compromised my security. Adrian moved closer until she was caught between his body and the bar. You think I didn't notice? Every file perfectly organized, every potential vulnerability flagged before it became a problem. Every schedule optimized not just for efficiency, but for security. That's my job. No. Your job is to manage my calendar and answer my phones. What you actually do is run counterintelligence from a desk without ever being asked, without ever demanding recognition or reward. His voice softened to something almost like reverence. So no, Lena, you won't refuse. Because some bastard tried to use you to hurt something you've spent 3 years protecting, and you're going to make him pay for that. He was right. The realization burned through her anger and fear and settled into cold determination. Someone had played her, used her hope and loneliness and desire to be seen as weapons against both her and Adrian. She took the whiskey glass and drained it in one swallow. The burn felt appropriate. What do you want me to find out? Adrian's smile was pure winter. Everything. Torino's occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse in River North, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs and the kind of studied industrial chic that charged $40 for pasta. Lena arrived exactly on time, her heels clicking against reclaimed hardwood, red dress attracting every eye in the room. Evan was already seated, looking exactly like he had in her imagination. Dark hair artfully tousled, smile warm and genuine, rising from his chair like a gentleman in a movie she'd watched too many times. Lena, you look absolutely stunning. She let him kiss her cheek, let him pull out her chair, let him pour her wine from the bottle he'd already ordered. All the while, her mind cataloged details with the same precision she used for Adrian's files. His watch was a Patek Philippe. The investment consultant was wearing $30,000 on his wrist. His hands were manicured but showed calluses across the palms. Not gym calluses. Something else. And when he smiled, it didn't quite reach his eyes. I was worried you might cancel, Evan said, his hand covering hers on the table. You're always so busy with work. It's a demanding job. I can imagine. Adrian Voss doesn't strike me as an easy man to work for. There it was. 3 minutes in and he'd already steered toward Adrian. Lena withdrew her hand, reaching for her wine instead. What makes you say that? Just his reputation. Powerful businessman, very private about his affairs. Evan leaned forward, conspiratorial and charming. Must be fascinating seeing how someone like that operates up close. It's mostly boring administrative work, scheduling, phone calls, filing. Come on. His smile widened. You can't tell me there aren't perks. Access to that world, the parties, the connections, the inside track on deals before they go public. Lena's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression placid. I sign NDAs about most of what I see. Professional ethics. Of course, of course. Evan sat back, seeming to recalibrate. I'm not trying to pry. I'm just interested in you, your life, what it's like being so close to power like that. A waiter appeared with appetizers neither of them had ordered yet. As he set down plates, Lena caught the slight bulge under his jacket. Not a waiter. One of Adrian's people. How many others were here? She forced herself to focus on Evan, who was watching her with an intensity that might have seemed romantic 6 hours ago. Now it just felt calculated. Power is just responsibility with better lighting, she said lightly. Most days I'm just trying to keep schedules from colliding and making sure meetings start on time. But you must overhear things. Deals being made, contracts being signed. Evan's hand found hers again. I've been thinking about making a move into real estate development. If you ever heard about opportunities before they hit the market, nothing illegal, just friend helping friend, I'd be incredibly grateful. There it was. The ask. Wrapped in romance and tied with manipulation. Lena let her smile turn shy, uncertain. I couldn't possibly... my job... I'm not asking you to steal anything. Just, if you happen to hear about something, and you happen to mention it to someone you care about. His thumb traced circles on her palm. We could help each other, Lena. I have resources, connections. I could make sure you're taken care of, protected. A woman like you shouldn't be dependent on someone else's empire when you could have your own. The script was so transparent now she wondered how she'd missed it before. Every conversation, every compliment, every moment of seeming interest, all of it building to this. That's very sweet, she said softly, but I'm not sure I understand what kind of information you're looking for. Evan's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Nothing specific, just opportunities. Your boss must be involved in dozens of projects. Real estate, shipping, import-export. If you could give me an idea of what he's working on, where his attention is focused. Who sent you? The question landed like a knife. Evan's expression froze, then reassembled itself into confusion. I'm sorry? Who sent you? Lena pulled her hand back, watched him recalibrate again. 6 weeks is a long time to invest in a target. Must be something important you're after. For just a moment, his mask slipped. The warm, charming suitor vanished, replaced by something cold and professional. Then he laughed, the sound forced. Lena, I don't know what you're... Evan Cole doesn't exist before 18 months ago. No college records, no employment history, no digital footprint. She saw his eyes narrow and pressed on. You're good, I'll give you that. The whole lonely single guy new to the city thing was a nice touch. But you pushed too hard tonight. Real friends don't ask for insider trading information on the second date. Evan's hand moved under the table. When it emerged, he was holding a phone. He typed something one-handed, never breaking eye contact. You're smarter than they said you'd be. They? The people who hired me to get close to you, to turn you. His smile was all edges now. They thought you'd be easy. Invisible little assistant, desperate for attention, grateful for scraps. They didn't count on you being loyal. Loyal to what? To him. To Adrian Voss. To the monster you work for. Evan leaned forward. Do you know what he is? What he's done? The people he's killed, the lives he's destroyed. And you protect him. Schedule his meetings. Cover his tracks. You're complicit in every terrible thing he does. And you're so much better? Using me? Lying to me? I'm trying to take down a criminal empire. You're helping run one. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something in his expression shifted to satisfaction. Last chance, Lena. Tell me what I need to know about Voss's shipping operations, his overseas contacts, his financial structure. Do that, and you walk away from this clean, protected, maybe even rewarded. And if I don't? Evan's smile turned pitying. Then you become leverage instead of an asset. The restaurant's lights flickered. Just once, barely noticeable. But Lena had spent 3 years learning to read the signals in Adrian's world. Something was about to happen. I need to use the restroom, she said, starting to rise. Evan's hand shot out, gripping her wrist hard enough to hurt. Sit. Down. The gentleman was completely gone now. This was someone used to getting compliance through force. Let go of me. In a minute. First you're going to... A hand descended on Evan's shoulder. Marcus stood behind him, smiling with all his teeth. The lady asked you to let go. Evan released her wrist but didn't look away from Marcus. This is a private conversation. Not anymore, it's not. Marcus's grip tightened visibly on Evan's shoulder. Mr. Voss would like a word. I'm having dinner. Wasn't a request. 2 more of Adrian's men materialized at nearby tables. The real waitstaff had melted into the background. Lena realized with a chill that Adrian had locked down the entire restaurant. Evan seemed to realize it too. His free hand moved toward his jacket. I wouldn't, Marcus said pleasantly. You pull that gun, you'll be dead before you clear leather. And we really don't want to ruin the nice lady's dress with your blood. For a long moment, no one moved. The other diners, all Adrian's people, Lena now understood, watched with the casual interest of spectators at a sporting event. Evan's hand moved away from his jacket. This isn't over. Yeah, Marcus said. It really is. Come on. They hauled Evan from his chair with professional efficiency. Lena started to follow, but Marcus shook his head. Boss wants you to wait in the car. Said you've done enough for tonight. I want to... Car, Miss Hartwell, please. The please was pure courtesy wrapped around absolute instruction. Lena grabbed her purse and let another of Adrian's men, Thomas, she thought his name was, guide her toward the exit. The black SUV idled at the curb. Thomas opened the door, and Lena climbed into leather-scented darkness. She wasn't alone. Adrian sat in the far seat, tie loosened, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. How much did he offer you? What? Before he threatened you. How much was the bribe? Lena's hand shook slightly as she fastened her seatbelt. He didn't get that far, just offered vague promises about being taken care of. Amateurs. Adrian's voice dripped contempt. The Koreans used to send people like him after me, all charm and no substance. You handled it well. I didn't handle anything. She stopped, the weight of the evening crashing down. He knew exactly what to say, how to make me feel, seen, valued, special. Adrian's voice softened fractionally. That's what people like him do, Lena. They find the thing you want most and dangle it in front of you. And what do people like you do? The question hung between them. Adrian studied her for a long moment. We tell the truth. You want to be seen? I see you. Every day for 3 years I've watched you hold my entire world together with nothing but competence and determination. You want to feel valued? You're the only person in my organization I trust without reservation. You want to feel special? He leaned forward, and she could see gold flecks in his ice-colored eyes. Lena, you've been special since the day you figured out the Marconi shipping discrepancy was actually money laundering and adjusted the books to hide it without ever being asked. She'd forgotten about that. A small thing, 2 years ago. She'd just seen the problem and fixed it. That was when I knew you weren't just some assistant. That was when I knew you understood exactly what I am and decided to protect it anyway. His hand found hers in the darkness. So yes, I see you. I've always seen you. I just didn't let myself acknowledge what that meant until tonight. And what does it mean? The SUV's partition slid down. Marcus's voice came through. Boss, we have a problem. Adrian's hand tightened on hers for just a moment, then released. What kind of problem? Cole's not talking, and his phone just went dark. But we pulled his jacket. He's got 2 forms of ID, both different names. And this. Marcus held up a small black device. A tracker. He was going to plant it on her, Adrian said flatly. That'd be my guess? Want me to bring him up to the penthouse for enhanced questioning? Lena's stomach turned. Enhanced questioning. She'd typed enough reports to know what that meant. No, Adrian said, surprising them both. Do it at the warehouse. I don't want any of this touching home. Copy that. What about the girl? Adrian looked at Lena. That's up to her. You can go home. I'll have protection on you until this is resolved. Or you can come with me and see exactly what kind of monster you've been working for. It should have been an easy choice. Go home, stay safe, maintain the comfortable fiction that she was just an assistant in an unconventional office. But Lena had spent 3 years building Adrian's empire from the shadows. She'd buried bodies in paperwork. She'd laundered money through legitimate accounts. She'd destroyed evidence and manufactured alibis and done 100 other things that damned her soul just as thoroughly as if she'd pulled triggers herself. I'm coming with you. Adrian's smile was fierce and proud. I was hoping you'd say that. Eat. The warehouse squatted on the edge of the industrial district, surrounded by chain link and streetlights that had been broken so often the city stopped replacing them. Lena had seen the address in Adrian's files, one of a dozen properties held through shell corporations and used for things that couldn't happen in civilized spaces. Marcus and David dragged Evan, or whatever his real name was, from a second vehicle. His designer charm had been replaced with fear and defiance in equal measure. Inside, the warehouse was exactly what Lena expected. Concrete floors, metal shelving, a single chair bolted to the floor in the center of an open space. They zip-tied Evan to the chair with practiced efficiency. Adrian shrugged out of his suit jacket and handed it to Lena without comment, then rolled his sleeves up another turn. When he spoke, his voice was conversational, almost friendly. Let's start with the basics. Who hired you? Evan spat blood onto the concrete. Someone had hit him already, probably in the car. Go to hell. Eventually, I'm sure, but tonight, you're going to answer my questions. Adrian circled the chair slowly. You targeted my assistant. You spent 6 weeks manipulating her. You tried to turn her against me. I want to know who thought that was a good idea. She's just a secretary. Adrian moved so fast Lena barely saw it. One moment he was behind the chair. The next, his hand was crushing Evan's throat. She is not just anything, Adrian said softly. She's the reason my empire functions. The reason my enemies can't find purchase. The reason I'm still alive and in control. He released Evan's throat. Disrespect her again and I'll cut out your tongue. Evan gasped for air. The Koreans. Park's organization. They wanted inside information on your shipping routes. Park is dead. His son isn't. Adrian exchanged a glance with Marcus. Daniel Park is running his father's organization? Trying to. Wants to prove himself. Thought if he could crack your import business, he'd earn respect from the other families. By turning my assistant. By using her. She was supposed to be weak, lonely, easy to manipulate. Evan's eyes found Lena across the warehouse. They were wrong about the weak part. Adrian's hand settled on Evan's shoulder, deceptively gentle. What was the endgame? After you got the information? Evan's silence was answer enough. You were going to kill her, Adrian said flatly. Make it look like an accident. Remove the evidence of your approach. She would have been leverage first, insurance in case the information wasn't good. The temperature in the warehouse dropped. Lena watched Adrian's expression empty of everything except cold purpose. Marcus, David, give us a moment. The two men hesitated, then withdrew to the far side of the warehouse. Lena started to follow. Not you, Adrian said. You need to see this. See what? Adrian pulled a knife from his belt. Nothing fancy, just steel and purpose. See what happens to people who threaten what's mine. Lena's breath caught. Adrian, you don't have to. Yes, I do. He turned to Evan. You came into my city. You targeted my people. You were going to hurt someone under my protection. There's only one response to that. She's not worth it, Evan gasped. Just some assistant, just some nobody. The knife moved. Lena looked away, but not before she saw the arterial spray. When she looked back, Evan was slumped in the chair, and Adrian was wiping the blade clean on the dead man's shirt. His expression was utterly calm. Get Thomas to handle disposal, he said to Marcus, who'd reappeared. And find out everything you can about Daniel Park's operations. If he's making moves, I want to know before they land. On it, boss. Adrian walked toward Lena, knife still in hand. She should have been terrified. Every instinct should have been screaming at her to run. Instead, she stood her ground. Are you going to be sick? Adrian asked quietly. No. Are you going to quit? No. He studied her face, searching for something. Why not? Lena looked past him at the chair, at the spreading darkness on the concrete. Because he was right. I am complicit. I've been complicit for 3 years. I just didn't let myself see it clearly until tonight. And now that you do? Now I want to go home. I want to shower. I want to burn this dress. She met his eyes. And tomorrow, I want to come to work and help you destroy Daniel Park before he tries this again. Adrian's smile was terrible and beautiful. Tomorrow, we'll talk about Park. Tonight. He offered her his arm. Let me take you home. They drove through Chicago in silence. Lena watched the city lights blur past, her mind cataloging and filing everything she'd learned. About Evan, about Adrian, about herself. The SUV stopped outside her building. Adrian walked her to her door despite her protests. You don't have to. Yes, I do. He waited while she unlocked the door, then followed her inside without asking. Her studio apartment must have looked pathetic to him. 300 square feet of IKEA furniture and carefully managed poverty. Adrian moved through the space like he was memorizing it. You've been living here for 3 years. It's close to work. It's a shoebox. He turned to face her. Why didn't you ask for more money, better housing? I would have given it to you. I didn't want to seem greedy. Greedy? He laughed, the sound sharp. Lena, you protect millions of dollars of my assets every day, and you're worried about seeming greedy for asking for a livable wage. I have a livable wage. You have what I pay people who answer phones, not what I pay people who run counterintelligence operations. He pulled out his phone, typed something. Your salary just tripled, and tomorrow Marcus is going to help you find a real apartment, somewhere with actual square footage and security that doesn't consist of a broken intercom. You can't just, I can do whatever I want. I'm a crime lord, remember? His smile was self-mocking. Besides, if Daniel Park is making moves, everyone close to me becomes a target, including you, especially you. Lena sank onto her second-hand couch. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving exhaustion in its wake. He was going to kill me. After he got what he wanted, he was just going to kill me. Adrian sat beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Yes. And you killed him first. Yes. I should be horrified. You should be. But you're not. His hand found hers. Because you're like me, Lena. You see the world as it is, not as it should be. And in the world as it is, people like Evan Cole need to die so people like you can live. I'm not like you. No? She thought about the Marconi books, the shipping manifest she'd altered, the witnesses she'd helped disappear into NDAs and payoffs, 3 years of choices that couldn't be unmade. Maybe I am, she whispered. Adrian's hand tightened on hers. Tomorrow, everything changes. Daniel Park sent someone after you, which means he knows you're important, which means you can't be invisible anymore. I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn. He stood, pulling her up with him. Because the woman who walked into my penthouse tonight in that red dress, she's not a ghost. She's not a cipher. She's dangerous and brilliant in mine. The possessiveness should have rankled. Instead, it settled into Lena's chest like a key finding its lock. I need to shower, she said. I need to think. Take all the time you need. I'll be outside. You don't have to stay. Someone just tried to turn you against me and threatened to kill you. I'm not leaving you unprotected. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Get some rest, Lena. Tomorrow, we go to war. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Lena stood in the center of her tiny apartment, still wearing the red dress that had started everything, and tried to remember what her life had looked like 24 hours ago. Safe, small, invisible. She'd wanted to be seen. Now she was, and there was no going back. In the shower, she scrubbed until her skin was raw, watching the water circle the drain and wondering if she was washing away evidence or innocence. The red dress hung on the back of the bathroom door. a reminder, and a promise. When she finally emerged, wrapped in her oldest, softest robe, she found Adrian's suit jacket draped over her couch. He must have left it when he followed her inside. She picked it up, felt the weight and quality of the fabric. In the inside pocket, her fingers found a small box. Inside was a key, and a note in Adrian's precise handwriting. For when you're ready to stop living in shoeboxes. Alina sank onto her couch, holding the key and trying not to cry. Everything had changed. In one evening, she'd gone from invisible to essential, from overlooked to owned. And the terrifying thing was how right it felt. Outside, she knew Adrian waited. Inside, the woman who'd spent 3 years hiding was finally irrevocably gone. Tomorrow would bring war with Daniel Park. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, new choices, new lines to cross. But tonight, Lena Hartwell sat in her shoebox apartment, holding a key to a future she'd never imagined, and felt something like hope unfurl in her chest. The invisible woman was dead. Whatever came next would have to face whoever she was becoming. And whoever that was? She had a feeling she was going to be magnificent. Lena didn't sleep. She lay in bed watching shadows crawl across her ceiling, the key from Adrian's jacket clutched in her hand like a talisman. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Evan's face in that final moment. The shock, the fear, the arterial spray. Her mind kept trying to process it, to file it away in the neat categories she'd spent 3 years maintaining. It wouldn't fit. At 4 a.m, she gave up. The coffee maker sputtered to life in her kitchenette, and she pulled on jeans and an old sweater, something soft and formless that felt like armor against the previous night's violence. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Marcus here? Boss says you don't go anywhere without security. I'm downstairs. She looked out her window. The black SUV sat at the curb, exhaust ghosting in the pre-dawn cold. Part of her wanted to be annoyed at Adrian's presumption. The rest of her remembered Evan's tracker, his casual mention of leverage and insurance. She texted back, "Give me 20 minutes. Take your time. Coffee's getting cold, though." Despite everything, Lena smiled. She grabbed her work bag, laptop, files, the leather portfolio Adrian had given her last Christmas without ceremony or explanation, and headed downstairs. Marcus stood beside the SUV holding 2 paper cups from the 24-hour diner 3 blocks over. He looked like he hadn't slept either, but his suit was pressed and his eyes were sharp. "Miss Hartwell." He offered her a cup. "Black, 2 sugars. That's how you take it, right?" "How did you—" "I pay attention." He opened the SUV door. "Boss wants you at the penthouse by 5. We've got a situation developing." Lena climbed in, cradling the coffee like it might ground her to something normal. "What kind of situation?" "The kind where Daniel Park made 3 more moves overnight and none of them are subtle." Marcus slid into the driver's seat. "Boss is putting the whole operation on high alert. Everyone who knows anything is getting pulled in." The drive to Adrian's building took 8 minutes. The city was still mostly asleep, just delivery trucks and shift workers claiming the streets before the rush. Lena watched Chicago slide past and wondered how many of these buildings, these businesses, these seemingly normal storefronts were part of Adrian's empire. How many had she helped acquire without fully understanding what she was doing? The penthouse was ablaze with light. Lena stepped off the elevator into controlled chaos. Adrian's inner circle filled the living room. Marcus, David, Thomas, and half a dozen others whose names she'd typed into reports, but never actually met. Maps covered the dining table. Laptops glowed on every surface. Adrian stood at the center of it all, still wearing last night's shirt and pants, tie gone, looking like he'd aged a decade in 6 hours. His eyes found Lena the moment she stepped in. "Conference room, now." She followed him into the glass-walled space off the main living area. He closed the door, and suddenly the chaos was muted, just the 2 of them in a bubble of silence. "Daniel Park hit 3 of my operations last night," Adrian said without preamble. "A shipping warehouse in Pilsen, a nightclub in Lincoln Park, and he tried to bribe one of my accountants." "Tried?" "Margaret Chen has been with me for 8 years. She reported it immediately." Adrian's smile was grim. "But he's moving faster than I expected. More aggressive. Which means he's either desperate or he's got backing I don't know about." Lena set down her coffee, her mind already shifting into work mode. "What do you need?" "Everything you know about our vulnerable points. Every place where someone could leverage information or access to hurt us. He moved to the conference table where a laptop sat open. I need you to do what you do best. Think like the enemy and show me where they'll strike next. For 3 years, Lena had compiled information without fully processing its implications. Now, standing in Adrian's conference room with the bodies from last night still fresh in her memory, those implications crystallized with brutal clarity. She opened the laptop and pulled up the files she'd been maintaining since her second week on the job. Adrian watched over her shoulder as spreadsheets bloomed across the screen: shipping schedules, property holdings, personnel files, financial flows. I've been tracking patterns, she said quietly. Not because you asked, just because I saw inefficiencies and wanted to fix them. Show me. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Your shipping operation runs through 4 primary warehouses, but there are gaps in the schedule, times when cargo sits exposed during transfers. Here, here, and here. She highlighted cells in red. If someone wanted to intercept or sabotage, those are the windows. Adrian leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. How long have you known about this? 18 months. I flagged it in a memo. I never saw a memo. I put it in your personal file folder, the one marked urgent. She glanced up at him. You never read those, do you? I thought they were just administrative. He stopped, something like wonder crossing his face. You've been running operational security from my inbox for 18 months, and I never noticed. I thought that's what you wanted. What I wanted was someone to manage my calendar. His hand settled on her shoulder. What I got was someone who built a fortress around me without ever being asked. Keep going. Lena pulled up another file. Your legitimate businesses, the restaurants, the clubs, the real estate holdings, they're all profitable, but 3 of them show irregular cash flows that don't match their reported revenue. Someone with financial forensics training could spot the discrepancies. Which 3? Bellamy's in River North, the Jade Room in Chinatown, and the construction company that did the Riverside development. Adrian's expression darkened. Those are my primary laundering operations. I know, I restructured them 2 years ago to be more efficient. She met his eyes. I'm sorry, I should have asked permission first. You should have. He stopped, shook his head. You restructured my money laundering operation without asking? The margins were terrible. You were losing 15% to inefficiency and another 10% to unnecessary intermediaries. I streamlined the process and reduced exposure by creating better documentation trails that would survive casual auditing, but redirect serious investigation into dead ends. The silence stretched. Lena's heart hammered. She'd just confessed to 3 years of unauthorized interference in Adrian's criminal empire. Then Adrian laughed. The sound was sharp and genuine and slightly unhinged. You restructured my illegal financial operations the way most people reorganize filing cabinets. He pulled her to her feet, hands gripping her shoulders. Do you have any idea how valuable you are? How completely irreplaceable? I just saw problems and fixed them. You saw vulnerabilities in a criminal enterprise and patched them without ever once asking for recognition or reward or even basic acknowledgement. His thumbs brushed her collarbone. Lena, you could have sold this information for millions. You could have gone to the FBI and bought yourself immunity and a new life. Instead, you protected me. I work for you. No. You work with me. You have been for 3 years. I was just too stupid to see it. He released her, moved to the window overlooking the city. Daniel Park is going to come at us hard. He's young, angry, trying to prove himself. Men like that make mistakes, but they also take risks that smarter people avoid. What do you want me to do? Adrian turned back to her. I want you to do what you've been doing in secret for 3 years, but openly now. I want you to tear apart our entire operation and show me every weakness, every vulnerability, every place where someone could hurt us. That will take days. You have until noon. He checked his watch. 6 hours. Then we're having a full council meeting. And I want you standing beside me when I tell my people how we're going to destroy Daniel Park. Lena's stomach flipped. Your people don't even know who I am. They're about to. He moved to the door, paused. And Lena, when you're cataloging vulnerabilities, include yourself. Because after last night, you're the biggest target in my organization. He left her alone in the conference room with 6 hours and the weight of 3 years' worth of secrets. She got to work. By 11:30, Lena had compiled 47 pages of analysis. Her eyes burned. Her third cup of coffee had gone cold. But spread across the conference table was a complete map of Adrian's empire, with every weak point highlighted, categorized, and prioritized. She'd also found something that made her blood run cold. The conference room door opened. Adrian entered with Marcus and a woman Lena had never seen before. Late 50s, severe gray suit, the kind of face that had forgotten how to smile decades ago. Lena, this is Margaret Chen, my chief financial officer. Margaret's eyes raked over Lena with clinical precision. So you're the assistant who's been correcting my accounting errors. I wasn't trying to... Don't apologize. Your corrections were accurate and your documentation was flawless. Margaret pulled out a chair. Adrian tells me you've been running shadow operations for 3 years without supervision. I wouldn't call it. I would. And if you'd been working for me instead of wasting your talent on scheduling, you'd already be running your own division. Margaret opened a laptop. Show me what you found. For the next 20 minutes, Lena walked them through her analysis. The shipping vulnerabilities, the financial exposure points, the personnel who had access to sensitive information, the properties that could be used for leverage. Adrian listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. You're telling me we have 17 critical vulnerabilities across 5 operational areas, he said finally. 18. Lena pulled up her final spreadsheet. There's one more. She turned the laptop so they could all see. On the screen was a personnel file. Her own. I've had unrestricted access to your entire operation for 3 years. I know your suppliers, your buyers, your shipping routes, your financial structure. I know which cops are on your payroll and which judges look the other way. I know where the bodies are buried. Literally. She met Adrian's eyes. If Daniel Park wanted to destroy you, the most efficient way would be to get to me. He already tried that, Marcus said. Didn't work out great for him. Evan Cole was a recruiter, clumsy and impatient, but Park has resources. He'll try again, and next time it won't be seduction and manipulation. Lena pulled up another file. I've been going through Park's known associates. He has contacts with 3 organizations that specialize in extraction and coercion. Extraction, Margaret repeated. You mean kidnapping? Yes. The room went very quiet. Adrian's voice was dangerously soft. You think he's going to try to take you. I think I'm the most valuable asset in your organization that isn't you, and I'm significantly easier to grab. Lena pulled up a map of Chicago with her apartment building highlighted. I live alone in a building with minimal security. My routine is predictable. I have no combat training and no personal protection. If I were planning an attack on your operation, I'd start with me. Marcus swore under his breath. Margaret just nodded like Lena had confirmed something she'd already suspected. Adrian stood and walked to the window, his back to the room. When he spoke, his voice was absolutely level. Margaret, I want financial forensics on every transaction Daniel Park has made in the last 6 months. Find his money. Find his backers. Marcus, double security on all primary operations and move the sensitive shipments to alternate routes. Thomas, he turned back to the room. Thomas is going to move Lena into a secure location today. Non-negotiable. I have work. You'll work from the secure location. Everything you need will be provided. His eyes locked on hers. You're not going back to that apartment. You're not following your normal routine. As of right now, you're under 24-hour protection until Park is eliminated. You can't just... I can. I am. He moved back to the table. You spent 3 years protecting my empire. Now I'm protecting you. Deal with it. Margaret gathered her things. I'll have preliminary financials by tonight. If Park has offshore backing, I'll find it. She paused at the door. Miss Hartwell, when this is over, come see me. We need to discuss your future in an actual position of authority. She left. Marcus followed, already on his phone coordinating security changes. Lena and Adrian were alone again. You can't lock me away like you're valuable, like you're essential, like you're the one person in my organization I can't afford to lose? Adrian crossed to her. That's exactly what I'm doing. Daniel Park drew first blood last night. Now we respond, but I don't respond effectively if I'm worried about whether you're safe. I can take care of myself. Can you? His hand caught her chin. You're brilliant, Lena. Possibly the smartest person I've ever met. But smart doesn't stop bullets. It doesn't prevent kidnapping, and it sure as hell doesn't protect you from people who'd hurt you just to watch me bleed. The words hit harder than they should have. Lena pulled away, gathering her files with shaking hands. Fine. Secure location, 24-hour protection. What else? The council meeting is in 30 minutes. I want you there. Why? Because I'm about to tell 20 of my most dangerous people that you're my partner, not my assistant, and I want them to see your face when I do it. Partner. The word settled into Lena's chest like a brand. They're going to have questions, she said quietly. Let them. You've earned your place at that table more than half of them have. He checked his watch. Go clean up. There's a private bathroom off my bedroom. Margaret left some clothes for you. She guessed your size. How did she? Because Margaret notices everything. It's why she's still alive after 20 years in this business. He moved to the door. 25 minutes, Lena. Don't be late to your own coronation. The bathroom was larger than Lena's entire apartment. The clothes Margaret had left were laid out on the marble counter. Black slacks, a silk blouse the color of storm clouds, a fitted blazer. Professional. Powerful. Nothing like the invisible uniform Lena had worn for 3 years. She showered quickly, washing away the previous night's violence and the morning's revelations. The new clothes fit perfectly. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The invisible woman was gone. In her place stood someone who looked like she belonged in Adrian's world. Lena returned to the conference room at exactly 11:55. The space had transformed. 20 chairs surrounded the table, and 19 of them were occupied by men and women who looked like they'd stepped out of expensive corporate boardrooms and high-end crime thrillers in equal measure. They all turned to look at her. Adrian stood at the head of the table. Gentlemen, ladies, thank you for coming on short notice. His hand gestured to the empty chair at his right. Most of you know Lena Hartwell as my executive assistant. As of today, that position no longer exists. Murmurs rippled through the room. Lena forced herself to walk calmly to the chair, feeling 20 pairs of eyes cataloging every detail. She sat. Adrian remained standing. For 3 years, Miss Hartwell has been operating in a capacity far beyond her official title. She's restructured our financial operations, secured our vulnerable assets, and maintained operational security across every division of this organization. She's done this without recognition, without complaint, and without asking for anything in return. A man Lena recognized from files as Victor Reyes, head of the shipping division, leaned forward. With all due respect, boss, we don't know anything about her capabilities. We've never seen her in action. You've seen the results of her actions for 3 years. You just didn't know it. Adrian pulled up a screen behind him. Financial charts filled the display. Revenue increased 32% over the last 18 months. Anyone know why? Silence. Because Lena restructured our laundering operations to be more efficient. She did it without authorization, without consultation, and without a single error that might have drawn federal attention. Another chart appeared. Security breaches dropped 60% over the same period. Know why? More silence. Because she identified personnel vulnerabilities and flagged them before they became problems. She created protocols that protected our operations without anyone noticing they existed. Adrian's smile was sharp. So when I tell you that Lena Hartwell is no longer my assistant, but my partner in running this organization, I'm not elevating someone unproven. I'm finally acknowledging someone who's been essential all along. A woman Lena didn't recognize spoke up. And if we don't accept this, then you're free to leave my organization with a generous severance package and my sincere thanks for your service. Adrian's voice went cold. But if you stay, you acknowledge Lena's authority as equal to mine. Her orders carry the same weight. Her decisions have the same consequences. Is that clear? 20 heads nodded with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Good. Now let's talk about Daniel Park. For the next hour, Adrian laid out Park's attack. The 3 operations hit overnight, the attempted bribery, the infiltration via Evan Cole, and the expected escalation. Park is testing us, Adrian said, trying to find weaknesses. The fact that he's moving this fast means he's either desperate or overconfident. Either way, we respond with overwhelming force. What's the target? Victor asked. His money. Margaret is tracking his financial network as we speak. Once we find his funding sources, we cut them off and watch his operation collapse. Adrian looked at Lena. Miss Hartwell has additional thoughts. Every eye swung to her. Lena's heart hammered, but she stood and pulled up her own presentation. Daniel Park inherited his father's organization, But he doesn't have his father's infrastructure. He's operating on credit and reputation, trying to build legitimacy by taking down Adrian Voss. She clicked through slides showing Park's known operations. But he's exposed in three critical areas. His supply chain is fragile, his political connections are shallow, and his personnel are largely untested. So we hit all three, Margaret said from her seat near the middle. Cut off his supplies, expose his lack of political protection, and turn his people against him. Exactly. Lena pulled up another slide. But we do it simultaneously. If we give him time to adapt, he'll pivot. We need to destroy his operation in one coordinated strike. That's ambitious for someone who's never run a tactical operation, Victor said. Not hostile, just skeptical. You're right, Lena acknowledged. I've never coordinated a physical assault or managed armed personnel, but I've spent 3 years mapping criminal operations and identifying their breaking points. This, she gestured at the presentation, is what I do. You handle the execution. I'll show you where to strike. Victor studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Fair enough. Show me Park's supply chain vulnerabilities. For the next 3 hours, they planned. Lena provided the intelligence, the structural analysis, the financial weak points. Adrian's people translated that into actionable strategy. By the time the meeting ended, they had a plan that would dismantle Daniel Park's operation in 72 hours. As the room emptied, Margaret approached Lena. You did well. Better than most people do in their first council meeting. I felt like I was going to throw up the entire time. Good. That means you understand the stakes. Margaret handed her a business card. After this is over, call me. I meant what I said about finding you a proper position. I thought I just got promoted to partner. You did, but you need a title that reflects your actual capabilities. Partner is vague. I'm thinking Chief Strategy Officer, maybe Chief Operating Officer if you can handle the operational side as well as you handle the analytical side. Lena stared at the card. 3 years ago, she'd been thrilled to land a job as an executive assistant. Now she was discussing C-suite positions in a criminal empire. I'll think about it, she managed. Margaret smiled, the first real smile Lena had seen from her. You're going to be dangerous once you stop doubting yourself. I'm looking forward to seeing it. She left. Lena stood alone in the conference room, surrounded by the debris of planning and strategy, and tried to process how completely her life had changed in 24 hours. Adrian appeared in the doorway. Thomas is ready to move you to the secure location. Everything you need has been arranged. Where is it? 32nd floor, 3 levels below this penthouse. His smile was slight. I'm keeping you close. Of course you are. You say that like it's unreasonable. It's possessive. Yes. No apology, no justification, just acknowledgement. You have a problem with that? Lena should have. Every instinct cultivated over 3 years of professional distance should have been screaming objections. No, she heard herself say. I don't. Adrian's expression shifted into something that might have been satisfaction or might have been hunger. Good. Because what's coming isn't going to be clean or easy, and I need to know you're protected while we dismantle Park's operation. I can help with... You already did. Your analysis gave us everything we need. Now you stay safe and let us execute. He moved closer. This isn't about sidelining you, Lena. It's about keeping you alive so that when this is over, you can help me rebuild what we're about to destroy. The weight of it settled on her shoulders. She wasn't just analyzing anymore. She was part of the decision-making apparatus. Part of the violence that was about to unfold. People are going to die because of what I just planned, she said quietly. Yes. I should feel worse about that than I do. Adrian's hand found hers. The first time is always the hardest. After that, you learn to carry it or you break. You're not going to break. How do you know? Because you've been carrying the weight of my empire for 3 years without buckling. This is just making it official. He pulled her toward the door. Come on. Let me show you your new home. The 32nd floor apartment was 3 times the size of Lena's studio. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Modern furniture that looked like it had been curated by someone with actual taste. A bedroom with a bed large enough to get lost in. This is too much, Lena said. It's a safe house. You'll be here for 72 hours maximum, then we'll reassess. Adrian moved through the space, checking windows and sight lines like he was conducting a security inspection. Thomas and Marcus will rotate guard duty. You'll have secure communications access to me and Margaret. Everything else is locked down. I feel like a prisoner. You're not. You're protected. He turned to face her. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. A prisoner wants to leave. You... His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, swore softly. Park just made another move. Hit one of our peripheral operations on the south side. How bad? 2 of our people injured. The location is compromised. His expression went cold. He's escalating, trying to provoke a response. Are you going to give him one? Not yet. We stick to the plan, 72 hours. He moved to the door. Stay here. Stay safe. I'll check in when I can. He left before Lena could respond. She stood alone in her gilded cage, surrounded by luxury and protection, and wondered when exactly she'd stopped being horrified by the violence and started participating in it. The answer came quickly. She'd been participating all along. She'd just been lying to herself about it. Outside the windows, Chicago glittered like a jewel box. Somewhere in that vast sprawl, Daniel Park was making his moves. And somewhere in the machinery of Adrian's empire, the counterattack was beginning. Lena settled onto the expensive couch and opened her laptop. If she was going to be stuck here for 3 days, she might as well make herself useful. She pulled up Daniel Park's file and started reading. By the time the sun set, she'd found 3 more vulnerabilities in his operation. She sent them to Margaret with detailed notes. The response came back within minutes. You're supposed to be resting. Lena typed back, I'll rest when Park is dead. Margaret's reply made her smile despite everything. Now you're talking like one of us. The answer came back within minutes. You're supposed to be resting. Lena typed back, I'll rest when Park is dead. Margaret's reply made her smile despite everything. Now you're talking like one of us. One of us. The words should have felt like a condemnation. Instead, they settled into Lena's bones like recognition. She worked through the night, building attack vectors and probability matrices while Chicago slept beneath her windows. At some point, Thomas brought her food she barely tasted. At another, Marcus checked the perimeter and told her Adrian was handling something at the docks. She didn't ask what. She was learning that some questions were better left unspoken. By dawn, Lena had compiled a 70-page operational brief detailing every way Daniel Park's organization could be dismantled. She sent it to Adrian and Margaret, then finally collapsed onto the bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Sleep came in fragments. She dreamed of Evan's face, of Adrian's hands covered in blood, of herself standing in the conference room while 20 dangerous people waited for her to prove she belonged. Her phone woke her 4 hours later. Adrian's name on the screen. Did you sleep at all? His voice was rough with exhaustion. Some. Did you? No, I've been reading your brief. Papers rustled in the background. Lena, this is exceptional work. You found vulnerabilities in Park's operation that my intelligence people missed. I had more time to analyze the data. You had the same data they did. You're just better at seeing patterns. He paused. We're accelerating the timeline. Park hit another location this morning, a storage facility in Bridgeport. He's trying to draw me into a direct confrontation. Are you going to give him one? Eventually, but on my terms, not his. More rustling. Margaret found his primary financial backer, a shell corporation in the Caymans tied to a Hong Kong investment group with connections to the Triads. Lena sat up, immediately alert. The Triads are backing him? That's significant escalation. It explains why he's moving so aggressively. He's trying to prove himself worthy of their continued investment. Adrian's voice hardened. Which means when we destroy him, we're also sending a message to his backers that Chicago isn't available for expansion. How are you planning to... Lena caught herself. Never mind, I don't need to know the details. Yes, you do. You're part of this now. The sound of a door closing, then Adrian's voice came through clearer. I'm coming down. We need to talk. He disconnected before she could respond. Lena scrambled to make herself presentable. She'd just finished braiding her hair when the apartment door opened. Adrian stepped through looking like he'd aged another decade overnight. His shirt was wrinkled, jacket gone, and there was a shadow of stubble along his jaw that made him look dangerous and human in equal measure. You look terrible, she said. So do you. He moved to the windows, staring out at the city. Margaret's team is ready to move on Park's financial network. Victor has teams positioned at Park's 3 primary supply points. We're 48 hours from execution. That's faster than the original timeline. Park forced my hand. Every hour we wait, he gets bolder. Adrian turned to face her. But there's a complication. What kind of complication? The kind where Park knows we're coming. He pulled out his phone, showed her a screenshot. It was a text message from an unknown number. Tell Voss his assistant isn't as secure as he thinks. 48 hours. Then I take what's mine. Lena's blood went cold. He knows where I am. No. He knows you're under protection, but he doesn't know your exact location. If he did, he'd have already made a move. Adrian pocketed the phone. But he's got eyes on my operation somewhere. Someone's feeding him information. You have a mole. Yes. And until we find them, everything we do is potentially compromised. He moved closer. Which is why we're changing strategy. Instead of waiting 48 hours, we're moving tonight. That doesn't give your people enough time to... It doesn't give Park enough time to prepare either. Speed is our advantage now. His hand settled on her shoulders. But it means I need you to do something dangerous. Lena's heart kicked into overdrive. What? I need you to be bait. The words hung between them like a blade. Lena processed what he was asking, what it would mean, what could go wrong. You want me to draw him out? I want you to give him exactly what he thinks he wants. Access to you. Controlled access. But enough to make him think he's winning. Adrian's grip tightened. Park thinks you're my weakness. Let's prove him right in a way that destroys him. How? We leak that you're being moved to a different location, less secure. Margaret will make sure the information reaches the mole. Park will see an opportunity and take it. Adrian's eyes bored into hers. When he does, we'll be ready. And if something goes wrong, if his people get past yours, they won't. But if they do, Adrian's jaw tightened. Then I will personally destroy everyone and everything Daniel Park has ever cared about. But it won't come to that. Lena should have been terrified. Any rational person would have refused. But she'd spent 3 years watching Adrian operate, and she trusted his tactical mind even when she questioned his morality. When do we start? 2 hours. Margaret is already setting up the false trail. Victor is positioning teams at the intercept points. He pulled her closer. You understand what I'm asking. What could happen? You're asking me to trust you with my life. Yes, I already do. I have been for 3 years. She met his eyes. I'm in. Something fierce and possessive flared in Adrian's expression. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. When this is over, we're having a very different conversation. About what? About why I've been fighting myself for 3 years not to do this. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was hunger and violence and 3 years of restraint shattering all at once. Lena's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and for a moment nothing existed except the taste of him and the certainty that she'd been waiting for this without admitting it. Adrian pulled back first, breathing hard. Later, when you're safe and Park is dead and we have time to figure out what the hell this is. Okay. Okay? He almost smiled. That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? That I haven't been thinking about this for months? That I haven't been lying to myself about what I feel? Lena smoothed his shirt, her hands shaking slightly. We can talk about it later. Right now we have work to do. Adrian caught her hands, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. You're going to be the death of me. Not if Park gets to you first. He won't. The certainty in his voice was absolute, because I have something he doesn't. What's that? You. 2 hours later, Lena was in the back of an unmarked sedan with Thomas driving and Marcus riding shotgun. They were heading to what was supposedly a safe house in Evanston, far enough from the city center to seem like a legitimate relocation. In reality, they were heading straight into a trap. You good back there, Miss Hartwell? Marcus asked, his eyes finding hers in the rearview mirror. Define good. Not panicking, breathing steady, ready to trust us if things go sideways. Lena forced herself to unclench her hands. I'm good. Boss was clear about the parameters, Thomas said from the driver's seat. First sign of trouble, we get you out. Our job isn't to engage, it's to protect. And if they're faster than you? They won't be. Marcus checked his phone. We've got 3 follow cars, 2 ahead running interference. Victor's team is positioned at 4 intercept points along the route. If Park makes a move, we'll see it coming. The sedan merged onto the highway. Late afternoon traffic was heavy enough to provide cover, but not so congested that they couldn't maneuver. Lena watched the city slide past and wondered how many of the cars around them belonged to Adrian's network. How many belonged to Parks? They'd been driving for 20 minutes when Marcus's phone buzzed. He listened for a moment, then swore. "We've got a tail. Black SUV, 3 cars back. Just picked us up at the last exit." Thomas's hands tightened on the wheel. "Confirmed?" "Yeah, Victor's people are tracking it. 2 occupants visible, likely more in the back." Lena's pulse hammered. "Is this the play? Are they making a move?" "Unknown. Could be reconnaissance. Could be—" "Hold on." Marcus listened to his phone again. "Boss says to proceed as planned. Let them follow. See what they do." The sedan continued north. The black SUV maintained its distance, neither closing nor falling back. Professional, patient. That worried Lena more than aggression would have. They exited the highway onto surface streets. The safe house was supposedly 10 minutes away. The SUV followed, still hanging back. "They're not attacking," Lena said. "They're tracking us to the destination." "That's what the boss thinks, too." Marcus turned in his seat. "Change of plans." "We're not going to the safe house. Thomas, take the next right." The sedan turned sharply. The SUV followed. "They're committed," Thomas said. "Should I lose them?" "Negative. Boss wants them confident." Marcus's expression was grim. "We're heading to the secondary location, the warehouse in Lincoln Park." Lena's stomach dropped. The warehouse meant confrontation. It meant Adrian was forcing the issue right now instead of waiting for Park to set the terms. The drive took another 15 minutes. By the time they pulled into the warehouse district, the sun was setting, painting everything in shades of blood orange. The sedan stopped in front of a nondescript building that looked abandoned. It wasn't. As Lena climbed out, she saw movement in the shadows. Adrian's people positioned and ready. This wasn't a safe house. It was a kill box. And she was the bait at its center. Marcus led her inside while Thomas stayed with the car. The warehouse interior was vast and empty, except for a single chair in the center of the space and a lot of shadows where armed men could hide. "You're going to sit there," Marcus said, gesturing to the chair. "We're going to wait. When Park's people make their move, you stay down and let us handle it." "And if they reach me first?" "They won't." Lena sat. The chair was bolted to the floor. She tried not to think about why that might be necessary. Marcus retreated into the shadows. Lena was alone under a single overhead light, feeling exposed and vulnerable and trusting that Adrian knew what he was doing. The minutes crawled past. Somewhere in the darkness, she heard the soft click of weapons being checked, the rustle of fabric as people shifted position, the steady drip of water from a pipe overhead. Then the warehouse door exploded inward. 3 men in tactical gear stormed through, weapons raised. They fanned out with professional efficiency, clearly expecting resistance. They got it. The warehouse erupted in gunfire. Lena threw herself to the floor as bullets sparked off concrete. The tactical team returned fire, but they were outnumbered and outpositioned. Adrian's people had the high ground, the cover, and the advantage of preparation. It was over in 90 seconds. 2 of the tactical team were down. The third had his hands raised in surrender. Marcus and 3 others emerged from the shadows, weapons trained. "On your knees," Marcus ordered. The man complied. Marcus zip-tied his hands, then yanked off his balaclava. Lena didn't recognize him. Young, maybe 30, with the hard eyes of someone who'd seen violence and dealt it in equal measure. "Where's Park?" Marcus demanded. "Go to hell." Marcus hit him. Not hard enough to knock him out, just hard enough to hurt. "Let me be clear about how this works. You answer questions or I start removing pieces of you. Where is Park?" The man spat blood. "You think I'm telling you anything? Park's going to own this city by—" The warehouse door opened again. Adrian walked in, flanked by Victor and 2 others. He looked at the bodies on the floor with the same expression someone might give bad weather, annoyed but unsurprised. "Where's Lena?" "Here." She stood on shaking legs. "I'm fine." Adrian crossed the space in 4 strides, his hands immediately checking her for injuries. "You're sure?" "Yes." "They didn't get close." He turned to Marcus. "What do we have?" 3-man tactical team. Professional-grade equipment. This one, Marcus shoved the zip-tied prisoner, is being uncooperative about Park's location. Adrian studied the man with clinical interest. "Let me guess. Park sent you to grab my partner as leverage. Probably promised you a significant payday if you succeeded. The prisoner's silence was confirmation enough. Here's the problem with that plan, Adrian continued. Even if you'd succeeded in taking Lena, you'd never have made it out of this district. We've had this entire area locked down for 3 hours. Every exit, every route, every contingency. He crouched to eye level with the prisoner. Park played you. Sent you on a suicide mission to test my defenses while he watches from a safe distance. You don't know. I know everything. I know Park is operating out of a hotel in the Loop. I know he's got 6 people left in his inner circle after tonight's failure. I know his triad backers are getting nervous about his lack of results. Adrian's smile was cold. What I don't know is whether you're loyal enough to die for him or smart enough to take a better offer. The prisoner's eyes flickered. What offer? You tell me where Park is right now, not his base of operations, but where he is in this exact moment, and you walk out of here with enough money to disappear and start over. Refuse. And I let Marcus get creative with power tools. Marcus pulled out a cordless drill and tested it. The sound echoed through the warehouse. The prisoner looked at Lena, then back at Adrian. Why should I trust you? Because unlike Park, I keep my word. Ask anyone in my organization. I pay well, I protect my people, and I honor my agreements. Adrian stood. You have 30 seconds to decide. Park's at the Marina Towers, penthouse suite registered under the name Chen. He's got 4 guards with him and a tech specialist monitoring police frequencies. Adrian pulled out his phone, sent a quick text. Victor, confirm this. Victor made a call, spoke quietly, then nodded. Intel team confirms. Heat signatures match the count. Adrian pulled out a thick envelope from his jacket and dropped it at the prisoner's feet. 20,000 cash. Use it to be anywhere except Chicago by sunrise. Marcus cut the zip ties. The prisoner grabbed the envelope and ran without looking back. When he was gone, Lena turned to Adrian. You just let him go. I don't need him. I have what I wanted. Adrian's expression was predatory. Park's location. Confirmed. Time to end this. You're going after him tonight. Right now, Victor's already coordinating teams. He looked at her. I need you back in the secure location. This part isn't, I'm coming with you. No. Adrian, I've been part of this from the beginning. I'm not sitting in a safe house while you're not trained for assault operations. You'll be a liability. His voice softened fractionally. Lena, I need to know you're safe so I can focus on destroying Park. Please. The please undid her arguments. She nodded reluctantly. Fine, but I want updates, every step. You'll have them. He kissed her forehead, then turned to Marcus. Get her back to the 32nd floor, full security detail. No one in or out except me or Margaret. Marcus nodded. Yes, boss. What about the bodies? Thomas knows what to do with them. Move. Lena let Marcus lead her back to the sedan. As they pulled away, she watched Adrian through the rear window, already coordinating with Victor, already shifting into the role of commander planning an attack. She'd seen him as a businessman, as a crime lord, as a man barely restraining himself from violence. Now she was seeing him as something else entirely, a predator moving in for the kill. The drive back to Adrian's building took 40 minutes. Marcus didn't speak, and Lena was grateful for the silence. Her mind was racing through scenarios, calculating risks, trying to predict how the next few hours would unfold. They were 3 blocks from the building when Marcus's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his expression went dark. Are you sure? A pause. How many? Another pause. Understood. He ended the call and immediately pulled the sedan into a sharp U-turn. What's wrong? Lena asked. Park isn't at the Marina Towers. The prisoner lied. But Victor confirmed heat signatures that matched the count. Turns out they're civilians Park paid to stay in the penthouse and create false positives. Marcus accelerated. The whole thing was a diversion. Lena's blood went cold. Where's Adrian? He's fine. Already figured it out and diverted the teams. Marcus's hands were white-knuckled on the wheel. But the diversion had a purpose. While we were focused on the Marina Towers, Park sent his real team somewhere else. Where? Marcus met her eyes in the rearview mirror. Adrian's building. They're hitting the penthouse right now. The world tilted. Margaret. Is she? Unknown. We lost contact 3 minutes ago. Marcus was already on his phone, coordinating. Boss is en route, but he's 20 minutes out. We're closer. We're going there? Into an active attack? You're the target, Miss Hartwell. If they breach the penthouse and don't find you, they'll wait. Turn it into a hostage situation. Marcus's jaw was tight. Better we go in prepared than get ambushed later. The sedan screamed through traffic. Lena's mind raced through possibilities. Park had outplayed them. Used their own trap against them. Created a diversion that had pulled Adrian and most of his forces away from the one place that mattered. The building came into view. It looked normal from outside. No visible damage, no signs of conflict. But Marcus pulled into the underground garage and immediately drew his weapon. Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say. Understand? Lena nodded, her throat too tight for words. They moved through the garage toward the elevator. Everything was quiet, too quiet. The elevator opened without incident. Marcus hit the button for the penthouse, and they rose in silence. When the doors opened, Lena immediately smelled smoke. The penthouse was a war zone. Furniture overturned, windows shattered, bullet holes in the walls. And in the center of it all, Margaret Chen stood over two bodies with a gun in her hand and blood on her expensive suit. She looked up as they entered. About time you got here. I've been dealing with Park's people for the last 10 minutes. Marcus scanned the space, weapon ready. How many? These two, plus 3 more I incapacitated in the other rooms. Park himself got away through the service entrance when he realized I wasn't going down easy. Margaret's smile was grim. Turns out 58 years of surviving this business teaches you a few things about not dying. Are you hurt? Lena moved closer. Bruised, annoyed, but functional. Margaret set down her gun. Park was specifically looking for you. When he didn't find you here, he decided to settle for burning the place down and sending a message. What message? That he's willing to destroy everything Adrian has built if he doesn't get what he wants. Margaret pulled out her phone. But the fool made a mistake. He used his own phone to coordinate the attack. I've got his number, his location data, and recordings of every call he made in the last hour. Marcus grinned. Boss is going to love you. Boss is going to promote me. Again. Margaret looked at Lena. You did well tonight. Used yourself as bait without panicking. That takes courage. I was terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Overconfidence gets you killed. Margaret's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Adrian's 2 minutes out. He's going to want a full debrief, and then we're ending this tonight. How? Margaret's smile turned predatory. The same way Adrian ends everything. Overwhelming force and absolute commitment. The elevator chimed. Adrian emerged with Victor and 6 others, all armed, all moving with purpose. His eyes found Lena first, cataloging her for injuries, then moved to Margaret. You good? Never better. I have a gift for you. Margaret held up her phone. Park's complete digital footprint for the last 6 hours, including his current location and the identities of everyone he's contacted. Adrian took the phone, scrolled through it, and his expression turned savage. He's at a warehouse in Pilsen, the same warehouse he hit last night. Arrogant or stupid? Victor asked. Both. He thinks we're still chasing the Marina Towers lead. Adrian looked at his assembled team. We have a 30-minute window before he realizes his attack here failed and relocates. I want everyone we have converging on that location. No survivors among his operational team. Park himself I want alive. What about the Triad backers? Margaret asked. Once Park's eliminated, I'm sending them pieces of him with a very clear message about what happens when they try to expand into my territory. Adrian turned to Lena. You stay here, with Margaret and 2 guards. No arguments. For once, Lena didn't fight him. She'd had enough violence for one night. Be careful. Always. He kissed her hard and fast, then turned to his people. Let's move. They filed into the elevator, leaving Lena alone with Margaret and 2 stone-faced guards whose names she didn't know. Margaret poured herself a drink from Adrian's bar, somehow still intact despite the destruction, and offered one to Lena. No thanks. Suit yourself. Margaret sipped her whiskey. You're wondering if this is what your life is going to be like now. Violence and fear, and waiting to see if the people you care about come back alive. It wasn't a question. Lena nodded anyway. It is. For as long as you stay in this world. Margaret settled into one of the undamaged chairs. The question you need to ask yourself is whether what you get from this life is worth what it costs. For some people, the answer is no. For others, she gestured at the destruction around them, this is exactly where they belong. Which one am I? I don't know yet, but I know this. You didn't panic when Adrian told you to be bait. You didn't run when the shooting started. And you're still here now, waiting for results instead of calling a lawyer or the police. Margaret's eyes were sharp. That tells me you're more like us than you want to admit. Lena thought about the last 3 years, the files she'd manipulated, the money she'd laundered, the witnesses she'd helped disappear, all the choices she'd made that couldn't be unmade. I think I've been like you for a while now, I just didn't have a name for it. Now you do. Partner, Chief Strategy Officer, whatever title Adrian decides to give you. Margaret raised her glass. Welcome to the life, Lena. Try not to die too quickly. I'm looking forward to working with you. They waited. Time crawled past. Lena tried not to think about what was happening in that warehouse in Pilsen. Tried not to imagine Adrian in danger. Failed spectacularly. An hour passed, then another. Lena's phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. It's done. Coming home. 2 words that carried the weight of violence and finality. Margaret saw her expression and smiled. He's fine. If he wasn't, that message would have come from Victor. How do you know? Because I've been in this business for 20 years, and I know how Adrian operates. When he says it's done, it means exactly that. Park is finished. Another 30 minutes crawled past before the elevator opened. Adrian stepped out alone, and Lena's heart clenched at the sight of him. His shirt was torn. Blood spattered his face and hands, but he was walking, breathing, alive. She ran to him. His arms closed around her, and she didn't care about the blood or the violence or anything except the fact that he'd come back. It's over, he said into her hair. Park's dead. His operation is destroyed, his people are scattered or eliminated, and his triad backers received a very clear message about respecting territorial boundaries. What message? The kind that doesn't need translation. He pulled back, cupped her face. You're safe now. We both are. Margaret cleared her throat. I'm going to coordinate cleanup and damage assessment. You two have earned some privacy. She paused at the elevator. Adrian, the penthouse is going to need significant repairs. Might take a week. Lena can stay with me during reconstruction. I assumed as much. Margaret's smile was knowing. Congratulations on the successful operation, both of you. She left them alone in the destroyed penthouse. Adrian looked around at the damage with something like resignation. Park really did a number on this place. Margaret said he was looking for me. He was. Thank whatever deity you choose that you weren't here. His hands tightened on her shoulders. When I realized the Marina Towers was a diversion, when I understood what he was actually doing, I'm fine. We're both fine. This time. But Lena, this is what life with me looks like. Violence, danger, enemies who will use anyone close to me as a weapon. His voice was raw. I can protect you. I can give you security and resources and anything you want. But I can't promise you safety. Not completely. Not in this world. Lena thought about her studio apartment, her invisible life. 3 years of safety and loneliness and pretending she was something she wasn't. I don't want safety, she said. I want this. You. All of it. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. She pulled him down and kissed him fiercely. I'm not some civilian you picked up who doesn't understand the costs. I've been part of your empire for 3 years. I've made the choices. I've crossed the lines. I'm not innocent, Adrian. I never have been. His laugh was sharp and surprised. No, you really haven't. So stop trying to protect me from a life I've already chosen. Stop acting like I need to be sheltered from reality. She met his eyes. I'm your partner. In everything. That's what I want. That's what I'm choosing. Adrian studied her face like he was memorizing every detail. Then he kissed her with an intensity that made her forget about the blood and the violence and the destroyed penthouse around them. When he finally pulled back, his smile was fierce. Partners, then. In everything. In everything, she confirmed. He took her hand and led her to the one corner of the penthouse that had somehow survived intact, his private office. Inside, he pulled out a small box from his desk drawer. I was going to wait until this was over, until things were settled. He opened the box. Inside was a key identical to the one he'd left in his jacket. But things are never going to be truly settled in this life. There's always going to be another threat, another enemy, another war to fight. What is it? A key to my private residence. The place I actually live when I'm not maintaining appearances here. He pressed it into her palm. I want you there with me. Not as my assistant, not even as just my partner in business. As mine. The possessiveness should have rankled. Instead, it made something fierce and warm bloom in Lena's chest. Okay. Okay? He laughed. That's becoming your favorite word. It's efficient. It says everything that needs to be said without wasting time. She closed her hand around the key. When do we start? Tonight, right now. I'm taking you home and we're leaving all of this. He gestured at the destruction for Margaret and the cleanup crew to handle. What about the investigation? The police? Already handled. This building has the kind of security arrangements that make official investigations conclude very quickly with very few questions. His hand found hers. Come on, let's get out of here. They took the elevator down to the garage. Adrian's car was waiting, not the SUV, but a sleek black sedan that looked like it cost more than Lena's entire year's salary had been a week ago. He drove them through Chicago as the city transitioned from night into early morning. They left the downtown core behind, heading north into neighborhoods that got progressively quieter and more residential. Adrian's private residence turned out to be a converted industrial loft in a neighborhood Lena barely recognized. Nothing about it screamed crime lord. It looked like where a successful architect or designer might live. Inside was even more surprising. Clean lines, comfortable furniture, books on shelves, art on walls that looked chosen for personal taste rather than investment value. This is where you actually live, Lena said, taking it all in. This is where I'm human instead of the monster everyone expects. He shrugged out of his ruined jacket. The penthouse is for business, for maintaining the image. This is home. Lena wandered through the space, seeing pieces of Adrian she'd never glimpsed before. Classical music vinyl, photography books, a kitchen that looked actually used. I don't know what I expected, she admitted, but it wasn't this. What did you expect? Skulls and weapons displays? Maybe. She turned to face him. Everything I thought I knew about you keeps shifting. Good. That means you're seeing me instead of the legend. He moved closer. I'm not just the ice-cold crime lord. I'm also the man who collects jazz records and makes terrible coffee and has spent 3 years trying not to notice how extraordinary his assistant was. Why? Because noticing you meant wanting you, and wanting you meant risking the most functional partnership I'd ever had. His hands framed her face. I told myself I couldn't afford the distraction, that mixing business with anything personal would destroy what we'd built. But the truth is, I was just afraid. Of what? Of this. Of letting someone matter enough that losing them would break me. His thumb brushed her lower lip. And then you walked into my penthouse in that red dress, and I realized I'd already lost that battle years ago. Lena's heart hammered. Adrian, I'm not good at this. At being human. At admitting I need someone. His voice was rough. But I need you, Lena. Not just for what you do for my empire, for what you do to me, making me remember I'm more than the violence and the power games. She kissed him instead of answering. Let her mouth say what words couldn't quite capture. His hands tightened on her, pulling her flush against him, and for the first time in days, maybe in 3 years, Lena felt like she was exactly where she belonged. When they finally broke apart, Adrian's smile was real. Not the cold calculation he showed the world. Just genuine warmth and desire and something that might become love if they let it. Stay, he said simply. I already said yes. I mean permanently. Move in here. Make this home for both of us. His expression turned serious. I know it's fast. I know conventional wisdom says we should take things slow, but there's nothing conventional about us. And life is too short to pretend we're something we're not. Lena thought about her studio apartment. About 3 years of invisible existence, about the woman she'd been and the woman she was becoming. I don't have much to move. So that's a yes? That's a yes. Adrian kissed her again, slower this time, with the kind of certainty that came from knowing exactly what he wanted and finally allowing himself to claim it. Outside the windows, Chicago woke to a new day. Daniel Park was dead. His operation was destroyed. The Triad backers had received their message. And somewhere in the city, Adrian's empire continued functioning with the efficiency Lena had spent 3 years building. But inside this loft, in this moment, none of that mattered. There was just a man and a woman who'd finally stopped lying to themselves about what they wanted. Lena Hartwell was no longer invisible. She was no longer hiding. She was exactly who she'd been building herself to become for 3 years. Powerful, dangerous, and absolutely certain of her place in Adrian's world. And the terrifying, exhilarating truth was that she'd never been happier. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and Adrian's arm draped across her waist. For a moment, she let herself just exist in the warmth and quiet, pretending the world outside this loft didn't include crime empires and body counts. Then her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Reality reasserted itself, asserted. Margaret's text was characteristically blunt. Council meeting at noon. Your presence required. Wear something that says, I helped destroy our enemies, and I'll do it again. Lena smiled despite herself and typed back, I don't own anything that says that. Then buy something. Charge it to the business account Adrian should have given you weeks ago. Adrian stirred beside her, his voice rough with sleep. What's Margaret want? Council meeting at noon. Of course she does. He pulled her closer, his face buried in her hair. Can't we have one morning without someone requiring something? You run a criminal empire. I don't think mornings off are part of the package. They should be. I'm adding it to the benefit structure. His hand traced lazy patterns on her hip. Stay here. Call in sick. Let them figure things out without us for once. It was tempting, but Lena had spent 3 years learning that power required constant maintenance, and absence was just another word for vulnerability. We can't. You know we can't. She turned to face him. Park is dead, but his backers are still out there. His people are scattered, but not all eliminated. And Margaret said there's already talk about who's going to try to claim his territory. Adrian's expression shifted from sleepy contentment to cold calculation in seconds. Who's talking? She didn't say. Just that we need to address it before it becomes a problem. Everything becomes a problem if you ignore it long enough. He sat up, the sheet falling away from his chest. Fine. Council meeting at noon. But first, coffee and breakfast that doesn't come from a paper bag. They moved through this morning with an ease that surprised Lena. Adrian made coffee that was, as promised, terrible. She made eggs that were barely edible. They ate standing at his kitchen counter like normal people, and for 20 minutes they weren't crime lord and strategist, just two people figuring out how to share space. Then Lena's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but instinct, 3 years of being Adrian's first line of defense, made her pick up. Miss Hartwell. The voice was smooth, accented, unfamiliar. My name is Vincent Zhao. I represent certain business interests that were recently affiliated with Daniel Park. Adrian's head snapped up. Lena hit the speaker button. I don't discuss business over unsecured lines, Mr. Zhao. Of course not, which is why I'm calling to arrange a meeting today, before you and Mr. Voss make any decisions that might be regrettable for all parties involved. Are you threatening me? I'm offering an opportunity for dialogue. Daniel Park was reckless and paid the price. His backers understand that. But the territory he was developing still has value, and there are questions about how that value will be distributed now that he's gone. Adrian was already on his own phone, texting rapidly. Lena kept her voice calm. What makes you think I have any authority to discuss territorial distribution? Please, Miss Hartwell. We've been watching you for some time. You're far more than Adrian Voss's assistant. You're his architect, the mind behind his expansion. Zhao's voice carried something between respect and threat, which is why we'd like to meet with you specifically. Today, 2 o'clock. The Sterling Hotel, room 2847. I'll need to consult with my partner before agreeing to any meetings. Your partner's listening right now, isn't he? Zhao sounded amused. Tell him we come in good faith. No weapons. No entourage. Just conversation between professionals about mutually beneficial arrangements. The line went dead. Adrian's expression was dark. The Sterling Hotel is neutral territory. High-end enough that violence would be noticed. Public enough that an ambush would be complicated. You think it's legitimate? An actual offer to negotiate? I think it's a probe. They want to see how we respond, whether we're confident or defensive, strong or vulnerable. He set down his phone. Margaret's already running background on Vincent Zhao. If he's who I think he is, he's a fixer for the Hong Kong syndicates. High level, connected. Dangerous in ways that don't involve guns. So we don't go. We go. But carefully. Adrian moved to the windows, staring out at Chicago. Park's backers lost their investment when we killed him. Now they're trying to salvage something from the wreckage. If we refuse to meet, we look afraid. If we meet unprepared, we show weakness. And if we meet prepared, then we control the narrative. Make them understand that Chicago isn't available for expansion, regardless of how much money they throw at it. He turned back to her. But Lena, this isn't going to be like Park. These people are sophisticated. They'll come at us through lawyers and legitimate businesses and financial pressure, not street-level violence. I know. I've read their files. His eyebrow arched. When did you read their files? 6 months ago, when I noticed unusual capital flows into real estate that matched patterns from Hong Kong investment groups. I flagged it as a potential vulnerability, but you were dealing with the Irish problem at the time, so I just monitored it myself. Adrian stared at her. You've been tracking foreign investment patterns for 6 months without telling me. I put it in the briefings, the ones you don't read. I need to start reading those briefings. Yes, you do. Lena finished her terrible coffee. For meeting Zhao at 2, I need to go shopping. Margaret's right. I don't own anything that projects the right image for this kind of negotiation. Take Marcus. And my credit card. Buy whatever you need. He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. And Lena, be intimidating. These people need to see that taking you was never going to work because you're not a weakness. You're a weapon. She met his eyes. I can do that. 2 hours later, Lena stood in front of a mirror in a boutique that didn't have prices on anything because if you needed to ask, you couldn't afford it. The saleswoman had brought her a tailored suit in charcoal gray with a silk blouse the color of fresh blood. It fit like armor. Marcus waited outside, looking uncomfortable among the designer displays. When Lena emerged, his expression shifted to approval. Boss is going to lose his mind when he sees you in that. That's not the goal. Maybe not, but it'll be a nice bonus. Marcus checked his watch. We should get you back. Margaret wants prep time before the council meeting. They drove back to Adrian's building. The penthouse was still under repair, so Margaret had commandeered the conference center on the 40th floor. When Lena walked in, the older woman looked up from her laptop and smiled. Now that's more like it. You look like someone who could buy and sell small countries. Is that the image we're going for? It's exactly the image we're going for. The triads respect power and money. Show them both. Margaret gestured to a chair. Sit. We have 90 minutes before the council meeting and 6 hours before you meet Zhao. I want you prepared for both. The next hour was a masterclass in corporate warfare. Margaret walked Lena through the triad's typical negotiation tactics, their business structure, their cultural expectations, and the subtle ways they try to test her authority. They'll address you respectfully, but they'll watch for any sign that Adrian pulls your strings. You need to make it clear you're not a mouthpiece. You're a decision maker. Margaret pulled up financial documents. I've put together a portfolio showing our legitimate holdings and their revenue streams. Nothing illegal, nothing that exposes our actual operations, but enough to demonstrate we're not some street gang they can bully with economic pressure. What do they actually want? Best guess? They want to negotiate a piece of the territory Park was developing, maybe a partnership arrangement where they provide capital and we provide local expertise. Margaret's expression was grim. What they're really doing is testing whether we're vulnerable enough to accept subordinate status in our own city. And we're not. We're absolutely not. But we also can't afford a prolonged war with a syndicate that has unlimited resources and political connections that span continents. Margaret closed her laptop. This is where your particular skills become essential, Lena. Adrian is excellent at projecting strength through force. You're excellent at projecting strength through intelligence. Zhao needs to see both. The council meeting started at exactly noon. Lena walked into the conference room beside Adrian, feeling 20 pairs of eyes assess her new appearance. Victor nodded approval. Thomas looked mildly impressed. A few of the others looked skeptical. Adrian didn't bother with preamble. Daniel Park is dead. His operation is dismantled. His people are scattered or eliminated. As of this morning, we've absorbed 4 of his legitimate businesses and seized control of his primary distribution network. What about his backers? Someone asked. His backers reached out this morning. They want a meeting to discuss territorial arrangements. Adrian gestured to Lena. Miss Hartwell and I will be handling that negotiation. Victor leaned forward. Is that wise? Bringing her into direct contact with the people who just tried to kill her? They didn't try to kill her. Park did. His backers are too sophisticated for that kind of crude approach. Adrian's hand settled on Lena's shoulder. And yes, it's wise. Because Lena understands their financial tactics better than anyone in this room. When they try to pressure us through economic leverage, she'll dismantle their arguments before they finish making them. Margaret spoke up. I've analyzed their known holdings in Chicago. They own significant legitimate real estate, have partnerships with 3 major banks, and control a venture capital fund that's invested in local tech startups. If they wanted to hurt us through legal channels, they have options. So we make sure they don't want to. Lena pulled up her presentation. I've identified 6 points of mutual vulnerability. Places where our operations intersect with theirs in ways that would damage both parties, if exposed. We go into this meeting making it clear that warfare would be mutually destructive. She walked them through it. The overlapping supply chains, the shared political connections, the financial institutions that served both organizations. By the time she finished, even the skeptics looked convinced. You're proposing mutually assured destruction as a negotiating tactic, Victor said. I'm proposing reality as a negotiating tactic. They need to understand that we're not isolated criminals they can pressure. We're integrated into the same systems they use. Attacking us means attacking their own infrastructure. Adrian's smile was fierce. Any other concerns about bringing Lena to this meeting? Silence. Good. Then let's move on to the consolidation of Park's former territories. They spent the next hour dividing up the spoils. Lena watched Adrian manage his people with the same precision he applied to everything, giving each person enough to feel rewarded while maintaining absolute control over the strategic assets. It was a performance, and he executed it flawlessly. When the meeting ended, Margaret pulled Lena aside. You did well, better than well. Victor and Thomas were skeptical about Adrian elevating you, but after that presentation, they're believers. I just showed them the data. You showed them that you understand this business at a level that took most of them 20 years to achieve. That's not nothing. Margaret checked her watch. You have 4 hours until the Zhao meeting. Go home, rest, prepare mentally. This negotiation is going to be different from anything you've done before. Lena found Adrian in the hallway, already on his phone coordinating something. He ended the call when he saw her. Ready to go? Where? Home. Our home, where we can have a few hours of peace before we walk into the lion's den. They drove in comfortable silence. When they reached the loft, Adrian immediately went to the kitchen and started making lunch with the focused intensity he brought to everything. You're nervous, Lena observed. I'm concerned. There's a difference. He chopped vegetables with more force than necessary. Park was predictable. Violence and ambition in equal measure. But the syndicates are different. They play a longer game, more sophisticated, more patient. And more dangerous? In some ways, yes. In others, no. They won't send people to grab you off the street, but they might destroy your credit, tank your investments, and ruin your reputation before you even realize you're under attack. He set down the knife. That's why I need you in this meeting, Lena. Because you see those kinds of threats. I'm good at dealing with enemies I can hit. You're good at dealing with enemies who hide behind spreadsheets and shell corporations. Lena moved behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist. We'll handle it together. Together, he agreed. That's going to take some getting used to. 3 years of operating alone, and now suddenly I have a partner who's better at half my job than I am. Only half? He turned in her arms, his smile genuine. I'm keeping the violence and intimidation portions. You're terrible at both. I could learn. Please don't. I like that you solve problems with intelligence instead of bullets. It's refreshing. He kissed her softly. Though I have to admit, you in that suit earlier was almost as intimidating as me with a gun. Margaret's influence. Margaret's influence has been turning you into a force of nature for months. I just didn't let myself see it clearly. His expression turned serious. After this meeting with Zhao, things are going to accelerate. The syndicates will either back off or double down. If they back off, we get peace. If they double down, we get war. A different kind of war than Park, but war nonetheless. What do you think they'll do? Honestly, I don't know. That uncertainty is what worries me. He returned to making lunch. But whatever happens, we face it together. No more hiding, no more pretending you're just my assistant. You're my partner in every sense of the word, and the whole city is about to know it. They ate lunch at the small dining table, discussing strategy and contingencies. By the time they needed to leave for the Sterling Hotel, Lena felt as prepared as she could be. Marcus drove them in the armored sedan. Victor followed in a second vehicle with 4 others, close enough for rapid response, but far enough to not seem aggressive. The Sterling Hotel was exactly as expensive as its reputation suggested. All marble and gold fixtures and staff who moved with practiced discretion. The elevator to the 28th floor required a keycard, which the concierge provided with a knowing smile. Room 2847 was a suite. Marcus knocked, and a young Asian man in an impeccable suit opened the door. "Mr. Voss, Miss Hartwell, please, come in. Mr. Zhao is expecting you." They entered a space that looked like it cost more per night than most people made in a month. Vincent Zhao stood by the windows, a man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of face that gave away nothing. "Adrian, a pleasure to finally meet face to face." Zhao's English was perfect, barely accented. "And you must be Lena Hartwell. Your reputation precedes you." "Does it?" Lena kept her voice neutral. "Indeed. The invisible strategist who built an empire while everyone looked elsewhere. That takes exceptional skill." Zhao gestured to the sitting area. "Please, sit. I've ordered tea, but if you prefer something stronger, the bar is well stocked." Adrian sat without accepting the offered refreshment. Lena followed his lead. Zhao smiled slightly. "Cautious, smart. You're wondering if this is a trap? If the tea is poisoned? If my people are positioned to eliminate you?" He sat across from them. "I assure you, nothing so crude. I'm here to discuss business, not violence." "Business like funding Daniel Park's attempt to take over my territory?" Adrian's voice was cold. Daniel Park was an investment that failed to produce returns. These things happen. Zhao's expression didn't change. "What matters now is what comes next." Park's operations created opportunities, infrastructure, relationships, distribution networks. These assets have value regardless of who controls them. And you want to control them. I want to negotiate their disposition in a way that benefits all parties. You eliminated Park and seized his operations. That's your right of conquest. But the capital that built those operations came from my principals. They'd like to recover their investment. Lena spoke for the first time. Your principals invested in a hostile takeover of established territory. The investment failed. That's the nature of risk. Zhao's attention shifted to her fully. "Miss Hartwell, direct and accurate. I appreciate clarity." He pulled out a folder. "Let me be equally clear. My principals have invested $30 million into Chicago operations over the past 18 months. Daniel Park squandered that investment through recklessness and poor judgment. We accept responsibility for backing an incompetent operator. However, we'd like to propose an alternative arrangement." "We're listening," Adrian said. Joe slid the folder across the table. "A partnership. You retain operational control of all current territories. We provide capital for expansion into markets you've identified but lack resources to develop. Revenue sharing on new ventures, 60-40 split in your favor, complete autonomy on local operations." Lena opened the folder. Financial projections, proposed business structures, detailed analysis of expansion opportunities. It was professional, thorough, and almost certainly hiding ulterior motives. "This gives you access to our financial systems," she said, "our suppliers, our distribution networks, everything you'd need to eventually cut us out." Chow's smile was approving. "You see the long game? Good. Yes, this structure would give us insight into your operations. But it would also give you access to our capital networks, our overseas connections, and our political protection. The question is whether the benefits outweigh the risks." Adrian leaned back. "You're asking us to trust that you won't eventually try what Park tried, just more slowly and carefully. I'm asking you to recognize that your organization, while powerful locally, has limitations. You can't expand beyond the Midwest without triggering conflicts with established territories. You can't access Asian markets without our connections. You can't move into legitimate international commerce without our financial infrastructure. Zhao's expression was reasonable, almost friendly. Daniel Park tried to take what he wanted through force. We're offering to build something mutually beneficial. The difference is respect. Lena caught Adrian's eye. They'd prepared for this exact pitch, the offer that sounded reasonable but created dependency. We need time to review your proposal, she said. Consult with our financial people. Run projections on the proposed revenue shares. Of course. Take a week. 2 if you need it. Zhao stood, clearly ending the meeting. But understand that this offer has an expiration date. My principals are patient, but not infinitely so. If you reject partnership, they'll pursue their Chicago interests through other means. Other means? Adrian's voice dropped into dangerous territory. Legal means. Legitimate business competition, regulatory pressure through political channels. Nothing crude or illegal. Zhao's smile was thin. We're not gangsters, Mr. Voss. We're businessmen. When we wage war, we do it with lawyers and accountants and politicians, much more effective than bullets and much harder to defend against. The threat was clear. Accept partnership or face economic warfare that could dismantle their empire without a single shot fired. Adrian stood. We'll be in touch. I look forward to it. Miss Hartwell. Zhao extended his hand. It's been a pleasure. You're everything my research suggested. I hope we'll be working together soon. Lena shook his hand, feeling the strength in his grip and the calculation in his eyes. We'll see. They left the suite in silence. In the elevator, Marcus spoke quietly. That went better than expected. No threats, no violence. That was all threat, Adrian said. Just wrapped in civility and business proposals. They drove back to the loft without speaking. Lena's mind was racing through implications and countermoves. Zhao's offer was sophisticated, well-structured, and potentially devastating if they rejected it. Inside the loft, Adrian poured them both drinks and settled on the couch. Tell me what you're thinking. I'm thinking we can't accept his deal. The structure gives them too much access and creates dependencies we can't afford. Lena sat beside him. But I'm also thinking we can't outright reject it without a credible alternative. If they come at us through legal and financial channels, we're vulnerable in ways we weren't with Park. So we need a third option, something that protects us from their economic warfare without giving them control. Yes, and I think I know how to do it. She pulled out her phone, opened her notes. We've been operating in the shadows for 3 years, building wealth but keeping it hidden. What if we stopped hiding? Adrian frowned. Explain. Margaret has been structuring our legitimate businesses to withstand scrutiny. The restaurants, the real estate holdings, the construction company. What if we took all of that and went public? Created a legitimate corporate structure that's too visible, too integrated into normal business channels to attack without drawing attention. You want to legitimize the empire. I want to build a fortress around it. The illegal operations continue underground, but above ground, we become a normal corporation with shareholders, public filings, regulatory compliance. Zhao can't wage economic warfare against a company that looks exactly like every other real estate development firm in Chicago. Adrian stared at her. That's brilliant and insane and might actually work. Margaret would need to structure it carefully. We'd need lawyers who specialize in corporate formation. We'd need to firewall the illegal operations completely from the legitimate business. Lena's mind was already racing through implementation details. But if we do it right, we become untouchable through conventional economic pressure, and we do it without needing Zhao's partnership. How long would something like this take? To do it properly? 6 months minimum? Maybe a year? We don't have a year. Zhao gave us 2 weeks. Then we bluff. We tell him we're exploring our own expansion plans through legitimate channels. Buy ourselves time while we actually implement the structure. Lena met his eyes. It's risky, but it's better than accepting a deal that will eventually destroy us or rejecting it and facing immediate attack. Adrian pulled her close, kissed her hard. How are you this smart? 3 years of watching you operate and thinking about how to protect what we built. What we built, he repeated. I like the sound of that. He stood, pulling her up with him. Call Margaret. Tell her we need an emergency meeting. Tonight. I want her opinion on this legitimization strategy before we commit to anything. Lena made the call. Margaret answered on the first ring. Tell me you didn't accept Zhao's offer. We didn't. But we need to talk about alternatives. How fast can you get here? Adrian's place? Give me 30 minutes. A pause. This better be good, Lena. I had tickets to the symphony. It's better than good. It might save us. Margaret arrived 28 minutes later, looking annoyed at missing her concert, but intrigued by the urgency. Lena walked her through the legitimization strategy while Adrian added tactical considerations. By the time she finished, Margaret was smiling. This is exactly the kind of thinking that makes you invaluable. Yes, it could work. Yes, it would take significant time and resources. But yes, it would protect us from the kind of economic warfare Zhao threatened. Can we do it in the timeline we have? Adrian asked. We can start it. Get the corporate structure filed. Make enough noise about legitimate expansion that Zhao's people hear about it and realize we're not dependent on their capital. Margaret pulled out her laptop. I'll need to bring in external counsel, people who specialize in corporate formation and don't ask too many questions about where the funding comes from. How much is this going to cost? Conservatively, $5 million for legal and accounting fees, another $10 million in legitimate capital to demonstrate we're serious about the business. Margaret looked at Adrian. Can you access that much clean money quickly? Yes, I've been moving profits into legitimate accounts for years, waiting for the right opportunity to deploy them. Then this is that opportunity. Margaret started typing. I'll have preliminary structures drafted by morning. We'll need to move fast, but if we can show Zhao a credible alternative within 2 weeks, he'll have to reconsider his approach. They worked late into the night, building the framework for what would become Voss Development Corporation, a legitimate real estate and construction business built on a foundation of carefully laundered money and protected by layers of legal structures that would withstand everything except federal investigation. It was after midnight when Margaret finally packed up her laptop. Get some sleep, both of you. Tomorrow we start building your empire in daylight instead of shadows. After she left, Lena and Adrian stood at the windows overlooking Chicago. Somewhere out there, Zhao's people were monitoring their communications, tracking their movements, waiting to see how they'd respond to the partnership offer. We're betting everything on this legitimization strategy, Adrian said quietly. If it doesn't work, if Zhao sees through it, or we can't execute fast enough, we'll be exposed and vulnerable. I know. And you still think it's the right move? I think it's the only move that doesn't end with us either subordinate to the triads or at war with them. Lena leaned into his warmth. We've been building toward this for 3 years without realizing it. All the legitimate businesses, the careful financial structures, the relationships with local politicians and business leaders. We've been creating the foundation. Now we just need to build the visible structure on top of it. Adrian's arm wrapped around her waist. A week ago, you were my invisible assistant. Now you're architecting the transformation of my entire empire. Our empire. Our empire, he agreed. Strange how fast everything can change. Not that fast. This has been building for 3 years. We just finally stopped pretending it was anything else. She turned in his arms. Are you scared? Terrified. But also more certain than I've ever been that this is right. His hand cupped her face. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Together, she echoed. They stood there for a long moment, two people who'd found each other in shadows and violence, now stepping into the light and hoping it didn't destroy them. Outside, Chicago glittered with possibility and danger in equal measure. And somewhere in the city, Vincent Zhao was making his own calculations about what Adrian Voss and Lena Hartwell would do next. The game was changing, the stakes were rising, and for the first time in her life, Lena wasn't hiding from the consequences. She was ready to face them head on. She was ready to face them head on. The next 2 weeks moved with the controlled chaos of building something real from nothing. Margaret assembled a team of lawyers who asked the right questions and ignored the wrong answers. Lena spent 16-hour days structuring financial flows and creating corporate hierarchies that looked legitimate because increasingly they were. Adrian watched her work with something between pride and disbelief. She'd transformed his loft into a command center, the dining table buried under incorporation documents and business plans. Every morning brought new challenges. Every night brought small victories. On day 4, the corporate filings went through. Voss Development Corporation officially existed. On day 7, Margaret secured their first legitimate contract, a mixed-use development in Logan Square that would actually get built, actually generate revenue, actually function exactly like a normal business. On day 10, Lena noticed the surveillance. She was walking back from a meeting with their new corporate attorneys when she spotted the same black sedan she'd seen 3 times in 2 days. Different drivers, same license plate pattern, professional tail. She didn't panic. She called Marcus. "I've got eyes on me. Black sedan, 2 occupants, tailing me since I left the law offices. Stay on the line. I'm tracking your location now." A pause. "Yeah, I see them. That's one of Zhao's vehicles, registered to a shell company tied to his operation. Should I lose them?" "No, let them watch. Let them see you building something real." Marcus's voice held grim satisfaction. "Boss wants them to know we're not bluffing about the legitimate expansion." Lena continued to the coffee shop where she was meeting Adrian, very aware of the sedan maintaining its distance. When she slid into the booth across from him, he'd already spotted the tail. "They're getting nervous," he said quietly. "Good. Or they're getting ready to make a move. Margaret says Zhao's been making calls, checking with his contacts in corporate law, trying to verify that our filing is real." Adrian's smile was sharp. "He's realizing we weren't asking for his partnership. We were buying time to make ourselves bulletproof." "We're not bulletproof yet. The corporation is filed, but it's still just paperwork. We need actual operations, actual revenue, actual legitimacy before—" Her phone buzzed. Margaret's name flashed on the screen. "We have a problem," Margaret said without preamble. "Zhao just made a move on the Logan Square development. He bought out our primary contractor and convinced the City Planning Commission to delay our permits." Lena's stomach dropped. "How much delay?" 6 months if we're lucky. Indefinitely if he keeps applying pressure." Margaret's voice was tight. "This is exactly what I warned about. Economic warfare. He's going to strangle the legitimate business before it can get established." Adrian's expression went cold. "Where is he now?" "His hotel suite. Same place as the first meeting." Margaret paused. "Boss, we can't respond with violence. Not to this. He's operating completely within legal bounds. If we retaliate the way we did with Park, we prove we're exactly what he thinks we are. Criminals who can't compete in the legitimate world." "So what do we do?" Adrian's voice was dangerous. "Let him destroy what we're building?" Lena's mind raced through options and discarded them just as fast. Traditional business responses would take too long. Legal action would be expensive and uncertain. They needed something faster, sharper, more decisive. "I need to see all of Zhao's Chicago holdings," she said. "Everything. Real estate, business partnerships, political connections, all of it." "Why?" Margaret asked. "Because if he's going to attack our legitimate operations, we need to understand what legitimate operations he values enough to protect." Lena was already standing. "Send me everything you have. I need 2 hours." Adrian followed her out of the coffee shop. The black sedan pulled into traffic behind them. Lena barely noticed. Her mind was already tearing apart the problem, looking for the vulnerable points, the leverage, the weakness that would let them win without firing a shot. Back at the loft, she spread out everything Margaret sent. Property records, corporate filings, partnership agreements, investment portfolios, the full map of Zhao's legitimate Chicago presence. And there it was. Buried in the documentation for a venture capital fund, hidden behind 3 layers of shell corporations, was a connection that made everything else make sense. Zhao's principals didn't just want Chicago for expansion. They needed it, because their primary money laundering operation ran through a bank that had recently come under federal investigation. They were desperately trying to diversify their dirty money into clean operations before regulators shut down their main pipeline. The Logan Square development wasn't just about hurting Adrian. It was about Zhao needing that same property for his own laundering operation. Lena pulled up her laptop and started building a presentation. By the time Adrian returned from coordinating with Victor about the surveillance, she had 40 pages of analysis and a plan that would either save them or destroy them completely. "I need to meet with Zhao again," she said. "Alone." "Absolutely not. Adrian, listen to me. He's not just attacking us to prove a point. He's desperate. His primary financial infrastructure is compromised, and he needs legitimate operations in Chicago to move his money. That's why he wanted partnership. That's why he's blocking our development. He needs the same properties we do." Adrian studied the documentation she'd assembled. His expression shifted as he understood the implications. If his money laundering operation is exposed, His principals will hang him out to dry. Exactly. Which means we have leverage, real leverage, the kind that doesn't require violence. Lena pulled up another file. But I need to deliver it personally, face to face, without you there to make it about territorial dominance. This has to be professional to professional. He could kill you. He won't. Because I'm going to give him exactly what he needs, a way out that doesn't involve destroying us or exposing himself. She met Adrian's eyes. Trust me, the way I've trusted you. The silence stretched. Then Adrian pulled out his phone and dialed. Margaret, set up a meeting with Zhao. Tomorrow. Just him and Lena. Neutral location. No security on either side. He listened to Margaret's objections, then cut her off. It's not up for debate. Make it happen. He ended the call and turned to Lena. If anything goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, I will burn his entire organization to the ground. I will spend every dollar I have in cash and every favor I'm owed to destroy him so thoroughly that his name becomes a cautionary tale. Adrian's hands framed her face. You understand that, right? You're not just my partner anymore. You're everything, and I protect what's mine. Lena kissed him, fierce and certain. I know. That's why this is going to work. The meeting happened at a law office in the Loop. Neutral territory, professional setting, no weapons, no entourages. Just Lena and Vincent Zhao in a conference room with glass walls and a dozen witnesses in the adjacent offices. Zhao arrived exactly on time, his expression carefully neutral. Miss Hartwell, I admit I'm curious why you wanted this meeting. Because we have a problem, both of us, and I think we can solve it without destroying each other. Lena slid a folder across the table. Your primary financial institution is under federal investigation, the one you've been using to process overseas capital for the last 6 years. You have approximately 8 weeks before the investigation results in regulatory action that will freeze your access. Zhao's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. That's speculation. It's fact. I have contacts in banking compliance who confirmed the investigation timeline. Lena opened the folder. You need to move approximately $200 million in capital from that compromised institution into clean operations before the freeze hits. That's why you wanted the Logan Square development. That's why you're blocking our permits. You need that property for your own laundering infrastructure. Even if that were true, why would you help me? I'm not helping you. I'm proposing a transaction. Lena pulled out a second folder. Voss Development Corporation will sell you the Logan Square property. Fair market value plus 20%. You get the infrastructure you need for your capital movement. We get enough profit to fund 3 other developments that don't compete with your operations. Zhao studied her carefully. And in return, you stop interfering with our legitimate business expansion. You recommend to your principals that Chicago is adequately served by the Logan Square operation and doesn't require further investment. And you maintain normal business relations without attempting to subordinate or control our organization. You're asking me to abandon my principal's expansion plans. I'm asking you to be practical. Your principals are about to lose their primary financial pipeline. If you deliver a working alternative in Chicago, you're a hero who saved their operation. If you waste time trying to establish dominance while their money gets frozen, you're the fool who failed when it mattered. Lena leaned forward. I'm giving you a win, Mr. Zhao. Take it. The silence stretched. Zhao flipped through the documentation, his expression unreadable. Then he closed the folder and looked at her with something like respect. You're offering me Logan Square, which you don't even control yet because I blocked your permits. I'm offering you Logan Square, which I'll have full control of in 72 hours because I have recordings of the planning commissioner discussing the bribes you paid to delay our permits, bribes that violate Chicago's ethics laws and would result in criminal prosecution if exposed. Lena's smile was cold. I can deliver those recordings to federal investigators, destroy your operation, and buy Logan Square and the resulting chaos. Or I can sell it to you quietly, profitably, and without the attention that comes from federal corruption charges. Zhao's laugh was genuine. You're not what I expected. No one ever is. That's been my advantage for 3 years. Adrian Voss is a very lucky man. Adrian Voss is a very smart man who finally stopped underestimating his own people. Lena stood. You have 48 hours to accept or reject the offer. After that, the recordings go to federal investigators, and you can explain to your principals why you lost everything trying to win a dominance game instead of solving their actual problem. She walked out without waiting for his response. Her hands were shaking, but she kept them steady until she reached the street where Marcus waited with the car. "How'd it go?" Marcus asked. "Either really well, or I just started a war we can't win." Lena climbed into the back seat. "Take me home. I need to tell Adrian what I just did." Adrian was waiting at the loft, pacing like a caged animal. When Lena walked in, he crossed to her in 3 strides. "Tell me." She told him everything. The offer, the leverage, the timeline, the recording she'd obtained through contacts in the Planning Commission office that proved Zhao's interference. When she finished, Adrian was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. "You threatened a triad fixer with federal corruption charges." "I offered him a business solution. The threat was just encouragement to accept it." "Lena, if he rejects this, he won't, because I didn't just threaten him. I gave him exactly what he needs to save face with his principals and solve their actual problem." She moved to the windows. "That's the difference between me and you, Adrian. You would have threatened him with violence, made it about power and dominance. But this isn't a street fight. It's a business negotiation. And in business, everyone needs to walk away with something." Adrian pulled her into his arms. "You're terrifying. You know that, right?" "I learned from the best." They waited. 48 hours felt like 48 days. Lena worked on backup plans and contingencies. Adrian coordinated with his people, preparing for the possibility that Zhao would reject the offer and they'd need to pivot to more aggressive tactics. Margaret called on R47. "Zhao accepted. He's sending a contract for Logan Square. Purchase price is exactly what you quoted. He also sent a separate agreement pledging non-interference in Voss Development Corporation operations for a period of 10 years. Lena closed her eyes, relief washing through her. "It worked. It worked because you understood what he actually needed instead of what he said he wanted. That's exceptional strategic thinking." Margaret's voice held approval. "How does it feel to have just saved the Empire with nothing but intelligence and well-timed leverage?" "Exhausting. Get used to it. This is your life now." A pause. "Boss wants to know if you're ready for the next phase." "What next phase?" "Making Voss Development Corporation actually functional. We've got the Logan Square sale profit. We've got protection from triad interference. Now we need to build something real that generates legitimate revenue and creates the fortress you envisioned." Lena looked at Adrian, who was watching her with fierce pride. "Tell him I'm ready." The next 6 months were a blur of corporate transformation. Lena and Margaret restructured the entire organization, creating clear divisions between legitimate operations and underground activities. Adrian's illegal empire continued functioning in the shadows, but increasingly, the legitimate businesses grew larger, more profitable, more real. The Logan Square development sale to Zhao went through without complications. They used the profit to fund 3 new projects: residential developments in neighborhoods that were gentrifying, positioned perfectly to ride the market growth. Lena hired staff, real employees with backgrounds in real estate, construction management, urban planning. People who had no idea they were working for a former crime lord because increasingly they weren't. They were working for a legitimate development corporation that happened to be owned by someone with an interesting past. Adrian struggled with the transition. He was built for shadows and violence, not boardroom negotiations and municipal permit applications. But he learned, slowly, imperfectly, with Lena guiding him through every step. "I feel like I'm becoming someone else," he admitted one night, 6 months into the transformation. They were in bed in the loft that had become their shared home, exhausted from another 16-hour day of building something new. "You're not becoming someone else. You're becoming who you would have been if circumstances had been different." Lena traced patterns on his chest. The strategic mind was always there, the ability to build and protect and manage complex systems. You just applied it to illegal operations instead of legal ones. And now you're proving you can do both. The underground operations fund the legitimate business until the legitimate business is self-sustaining. Then eventually, if we do this right, you won't need the illegal side at all. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "Is that what you want? For me to go completely legitimate? I want you to have choices. Right now you're trapped in this life because walking away means losing everything. But if we build Voss Development into something real, something that can't be seized or destroyed. You could choose to step back from the violence, or not, but it would be a choice instead of a necessity. What about you? What do you want? Lena considered the question. 6 months ago, she would have said she wanted safety, invisibility, a quiet life where no one noticed her. Now? She wanted exactly this. The challenge of building something from nothing, the satisfaction of seeing strategies succeed, the partnership with someone who valued her mind as much as her loyalty. I want to keep building this with you, however long it takes, whatever form it needs to take. She met his eyes. I'm not going anywhere, Adrian. You're stuck with me. His smile was real and rare. Good, because I'm not letting you go. They worked, they built, they transformed. By the end of the first year, Voss Development Corporation employed 47 people and had completed 2 major projects that generated legitimate profit. The company appeared in Chicago business publications as a rising player in urban development. Lena gave interviews to real estate journals, her face and name becoming known in circles that had nothing to do with crime. Adrian hated the publicity at first, but Margaret convinced him that visibility was protection. Hard to make people disappear when their photos appeared in the Tribune business section. The underground operations continued, smaller and more careful. Adrian maintained control of his original territories but stopped expanding. The money flowed upward into the legitimate business, slowly being laundered into something clean and defensible. Victor and Marcus transitioned into corporate security roles. Thomas became head of construction oversight. Margaret became CFO officially, the title finally matching her actual authority. And Lena became chief operating officer of Voss Development Corporation, the strategist who'd been invisible for 3 years now operating in full daylight. The day the Tribune ran a feature article about Chicago's most innovative real estate developers, with Lena and Adrian photographed at one of their completed projects, Margaret framed it and hung it in the corporate office. You've come a long way from the woman who wore the same 3 outfits and tried to be furniture, Margaret said, studying the photo. Sometimes I miss being invisible, Lena admitted. Liar! You were never invisible. You just made people think you were while you rebuilt an empire from the inside. Margaret's smile was proud. You're exactly where you belong, both of you. That night, Adrian took Lena to dinner at an actual restaurant. Not Torino's, where Evan Cole had tried to turn her. Somewhere new. Somewhere with no history or violence or ulterior motives. Just 2 people who'd found each other in darkness and built something in the light. I have something for you, Adrian said over dessert. He pulled out a small box that made Lena's heart skip. Adrian, it's not what you think. Not yet, anyway. He opened the box. Inside was a key. Not to an apartment or a safe house, something else. The deed to this loft, in both our names, legal, official, documented evidence that this is our home, not mine. Lena stared at the key, then at him. You're putting me on the deed. I'm putting us on the deed. Partners in everything, remember? That includes the place we live. His hand found hers across the table. I spent 3 years keeping you at a distance because I was afraid of what it would mean to let someone matter that much. Now I can't imagine trying to do any of this without you. You could, though. You built this empire before I came along. I built something that required constant violence to maintain. You showed me how to build something that sustains itself. There's a difference. He closed her fingers around the key. So yes, technically I could continue without you. The same way I could technically survive without air. Possible, but pointless. Lena laughed despite the tears threatening to fall. That's possibly the worst romantic declaration I've ever heard. I'm a work in progress. You'll have to train me in this like you trained me in everything else. His smile was self-deprecating. Though I should warn you, I'm better at strategic planning than emotional vulnerability. Lucky for you, I've gotten pretty good at both. She stood, pulling him up with her. Take me home. Our home. They drove through Chicago with the easy comfort of people who'd survived war together and built peace in its aftermath. The city looked different now to Lena. Not a battlefield or a territory to defend, just a city, their city, where they'd built something real. At the loft, Adrian poured wine and put on music, actual music, jazz that he'd probably owned for years but never played because there was no one to share it with. They danced in the living room, terribly and without rhythm, laughing at their own lack of coordination. "We're awful at this," Lena observed. "We're excellent at corporate strategy and money laundering. We can't be good at everything." Adrian pulled her closer. "Though I'm willing to practice if you are." "I'm willing to practice anything with you." They swayed to music neither of them could properly dance to, in a home they officially shared, building a life neither of them had imagined possible a year ago. Outside the windows, Chicago glittered with possibility. Voss Development Corporation would continue growing, transforming from a convenient fiction into something genuinely legitimate. The underground operations would slowly fade as the legal business became self-sustaining, and two people who'd found each other in shadows would keep building in the light. It wasn't a perfect ending. Adrian still had enemies. Lena still had nightmares about Evan Cole and the violence she'd witnessed. The transformation from crime empire to legitimate corporation was incomplete and fragile. But it was real. And it was theirs. Months turned into years. The company grew. Adrian's reputation shifted from feared crime lord to respected developer. People forgot, or chose to forget, or never knew in the first place. The past became something that happened to other people in another life. 3 years after the night Lena wore a red dress and everything changed, Voss Development Corporation completed its largest project, a mixed-use development in the West Loop that included affordable housing units alongside luxury condos. The kind of project that won awards and generated good press and demonstrated commitment to community development. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, with cameras flashing and city officials making speeches, Lena stood beside Adrian and felt the weight of transformation. They'd done it. Built something legitimate from illegitimate foundations, created jobs and housing and value that existed independent of violence or coercion. Adrian's hand found hers, hidden from the cameras by their bodies. "What are you thinking?" "What?" "I'm thinking about the woman I was 3 years ago. Invisible. Afraid. Pretending to be less than she was. And now? Now I'm exactly who I was always supposed to be. I just needed someone to see me first." She squeezed his hand. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for making yourself worth seeing." He turned toward the cameras, the public face sliding back into place. But his hand stayed in hers, the private truth beneath the public image. That night back at the loft, Adrian finally asked the question Lena had been waiting for. "Marry me." Not a question, really. A statement. A recognition of what they already were. Yes. They married quietly 6 months later. No big ceremony, no press coverage, just Margaret and Victor and Marcus and a handful of others who knew the whole story. People who understood that this wasn't just a wedding, but a coronation of sorts. The invisible woman and the crime lord transformed into partners who ruled an empire built on intelligence instead of fear. Standing at the altar in a private ceremony, exchanging vows that promised partnership and loyalty and transformation, Lena thought about the journey that had brought them here. The red dress, the warehouse, the bodies and the violence and the terrible choices. The slow, painful work of building something better. None of it had been clean. None of it had been simple. They'd destroyed people and broken laws and done things that couldn't be undone. But they'd also built something real. Something that employed people and housed families and contributed to the city instead of bleeding it. When the officiant pronounced them married, when Adrian kissed her in front of the few people who mattered, Lena felt the weight of 3 years of transformation settle into certainty. This was who they were. Not criminals pretending to be legitimate, not business people hiding a dark past. Something new. Something that existed in the space between darkness and light, built from both and transcending either. Years later, when journalists wrote about the rise of Voss Development Corporation, they'd tell a sanitized story. Businessman Adrian Voss and his brilliant partner Lena Hartwell, transforming Chicago neighborhoods through innovative development strategies. The truth was darker, more complicated, more human. It was about two people who found each other in violence and chose to build something better. About a woman who'd hidden herself for 3 years before finally claiming her power. About a man who learned that real strength wasn't just the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to build. Most importantly, it was about the choice they made every day to keep building instead of destroying. To use their intelligence and resources and ruthless efficiency to create, instead of conquer. Standing in their loft on their wedding night, Watching Chicago spread out beneath them like a kingdom they'd claimed through strategy instead of force, Lena understood something fundamental about power. It wasn't about being the strongest or the most feared. It was about being the smartest, the most adaptable, the most willing to transform when transformation was necessary. She'd spent 3 years being invisible because she thought that's what survival required. Then she'd discovered that real survival, real victory, required exactly the opposite. Being seen, being known, being powerful enough that hiding became unnecessary. Adrian wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "About invisibility, and how glad I am that I'm done with it." "You were never really invisible. I saw you. I just didn't let myself acknowledge what I was seeing. And now? Now everyone sees you, and they should, because you're magnificent." He turned her to face him. "We're magnificent. What we've built. What we've become." Lena kissed him, tasting promise and future, and the knowledge that they'd earned every bit of what they had through intelligence and strategy and refusal to accept the limitations others tried to impose. Outside the windows, Chicago lived and breathed and changed. Inside the loft, two people who'd been invisible, criminal and legitimate, separate and together, stood united in the empire they'd built. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would be more challenges, more enemies, more difficult choices. The transformation from crime lord to legitimate businessman was ongoing, imperfect, never quite complete. But it was real. And it was theirs. Built not on fantasy or illusion, but on hard work and ruthless intelligence, and the refusal to be anything less than what they were capable of becoming. Lena Hartwell had started as a ghost, an invisible woman managing calendars and hiding in plain sight. She'd become a queen. Not through violence or inheritance, but through strategy and transformation and the courage to finally claim her own power. And standing in her home, in her city, beside her partner and husband, she understood the most important truth of all. Real power didn't come from hiding or from dominating. It came from knowing exactly who you were, what you were capable of, and having the courage to become it fully, completely, without apology. She'd been invisible for 3 years. Now she was unforgettable. And that made all the difference.